we are up. This is episode number 38.
Wow.
Yeah, I hope my on-screen software is correct, of the Our Town podcast, and coming to you from Madison, Alabama. And it is a pleasure to have the guests I'm going to introduce in just a second. But for those that watch the episodes quite a bit, things are a little bit different today. And that is going to be because, and I'll introduce the guests on this camera shot, but we finally have a studio camera, a studio shot. But just continue to like, subscribe, spread the word of the podcast so that more and more people can find out about it. And with no further ado, we'll just go to it now. Here's our side-by-side. I'm going to debut this with Clark Dunn of Beyond Rockets. How you doing, Clark?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
Good. I feel like when I moved here and started this idea of a podcast, I know your name came up like right away. And I can't remember who. It might have been Bill Nyland at Activate.
Okay, yeah.
Because I know Fowler.
Yeah, he's right above me actually at my office.
Oh, you're in Lincoln Mill?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Or Lincoln Mill. I always want to think Low Mill, Lincoln Mill.
Yes. Yeah. I'm on the first floor. He's directly above me. So
okay. So this is a new camera. I had some other cameras that could have pulled this off, but Clark and I were just talking about when you have a podcast and you get into a kind of a studio setup, you want to have it be repeatable.
Yeah.
And I wanted the camera to match the other two cameras. I wanted it to be on remote control, which pan, tilts, and zooms are on remote control. And the people will see in the background there's a camera there. Should I ever have a third or a second guest, third person, I think I could fit them over there, and that's what that camera would be for. But this is our new shot. But there's Clark Dunn.
Whew. Excited to be here. This is I think you're actually the first time I've been on a podcast where I haven't been a host of the podcast.
Really?
And so I've been interviewed once, but it was on my own podcast for my I think it was 1 year of the podcast. So this is the first time I've been on anyone else's podcast. So I'm super excited to be here.
That was with her last name was Hendricks. Is that where you interviewed her and she interviewed you?
So I guess there's technically been two then. So my 1 year was with Imre Eladui. He's like a creative in town. He has a creative company right now. He actually interviewed me for my 1 year episode. And then for the Alex Hendricks, we kind of had like a Q&A back and forth. And so I guess I've technically done it twice. It was, but both were at different. I think the Alex was probably maybe year and a half, maybe 2 years into the podcast, and then Imre was 1 year in. And so I haven't done anything for the 3 years, so we'll see. I might wait till 4.
Were you nervous at all when you were the guest?
No, it's a little different. Like even now, like I say, when you put on the headphones, you can, even if you've prepared for an hour, maybe 2 hours, whatever that might look like. There's nothing like putting on the headphones to even get you a little bit nervous. Even if you've done, I think I just released episode 90 today.
Yeah.
It still is a very. I tell everyone, the hardest part of the whole podcast is the intro. It's the very first thing I say. Like once I say that, then I'm good to go.
Yeah.
But you like saying that first thing, introducing who I'm talking with. That's always the toughest. And once I get that, then the nerves slowly dwindle away. So.
Yeah, that was with the dietitian, right?
Yes.
I know what you're meaning because I don't do a lot of. I do an intro and it kind of varies from episode to episode. But every now and then I'll actually sit here and record something that I want to kind of do a post-production and just add it back into the final edit.
Yeah.
I didn't do a very good intro. And I'll sit here and do like 90 takes. It takes me forever.
Yes.
To finally settle on something. Well, let's start with this. And this is certainly, I don't know how much lead time do you give yourself from when you record to when you publish it?
I try to be like at least 4 weeks out for episodes.
Okay.
So I'm currently, I recorded last week and that episode will be coming out middle of December.
Okay.
And so I try that's kind of the rotation right now. I do weekly episodes as well. And those I get recorded on Tuesday and they come out Thursday.
Right.
And so those are very quick just because I try to like make sure all these events are taking place and make sure I know about everything that's going on. And those really can't be prepped too far in advance. If I go out of town, I'll try to prep it maybe like the Friday before I leave. But typically it's about a 3 to 4 week turnaround.
So today is November 21st and Bucee's open today in Athens.
Big day for
and
Athens.
That's big news.
Yeah, it's huge.
Now, I moved from Virginia. I was not aware of Bucee's. I guess it's out of Texas. Mm-hmm. And it was only within the last 3 months that someone that had been from Texas, I was up in Virginia on business, that someone mentioned this whole thing about Bucee's. Like, what are you talking about? And then lo and behold, we go down to Orange Beach for vacation, and then on the way out, because it's maybe 50 miles from there, there's like a Bucky's, right? So we go there, we kind of experience it, and then lo and behold, we find out they're opening one.
Yes.
Have you been to a Bucky's
I've
before?
been to a Bucky's once. My brother lived in Texas for a little while, and so when I moved him out there, we were driving through Texas to get to Bryan, Texas, where they lived, and we stopped at a Bucky's, and it's like an amusement park for gas stations.
Yeah.
It's massive, and so I'm excited. Like, I've driven by the one. What's funny is now my brother lives in Athens, and so now the Bucky's is pretty close to where he lives, and so now he kind of has, like, he's bringing things from Texas back to Alabama, so it's good. People are super excited. So
one thing that I know that I want to talk about with you is, and I always try to explore a little bit more of what people don't know about someone. Certainly, you can now get 90 episodes of Clark Dunn on Beyond Rockets, but I do want to talk a little bit more, and I think you do, about just what you're doing. That's kind of an extension. Beyond Rockets is a marketing LLC.
Yes.
LLC, and I want to dive into that more, to kind of talk about some of the clients that you have. And then of course the podcast is an extension of that, right? Or a brand off of that. But the Bucky's thing has got my attention. Like, how would you go about, as a marketing person, what is it that works, or what have they figured out kind of from a marketing perspective, or just this overall concept where it's like, it's almost, there's this huge following, right?
Yeah.
And or there's just so much fervor and anticipation and excitement to, how do they accomplish that?
I mean, I think like they're a model of having these like huge locations, these huge gas stations in places that are really, really far apart. And I think starting it in Texas, they were able to see it. The location of it being right off the main strip most of the time, so it's a place that gets tons of traffic by. And I think just the whole size and the excitement of the character they've created of Bucky, I think is really, it's people buy their Christmas gifts from Bucky's. People have like a full wardrobe from Bucky's, like all their food from Bucky's. Like like the bathrooms at Bucky's are the best bathrooms you'll ever experience at a gas station. And so I think that like the whole tier of just creating this brand around this character, and then making the exceptional experience of a gas station beyond just what you'd get from like a BP or a Texaco.
Right.
And so I think that's the excitement behind it. It's very interesting that it's coming to Athens. I mean, I think Athens is the next place to start seeing that huge growth that Huntsville's seen and that Madison's seeing, and now I think that's transitioning to Athens. And so I think they're in the perfect spot right off of 65 right there. So it's such an interesting thing. I mean, when I see people wearing Bucky's hats or Bucky's keychains in town prior to them, like even when they like first announced it, it was very funny. Like, now Bucky's wardrobe has made it to Huntsville.
Yeah.
So now everyone's gonna be wearing Bucky's Christmas gifts, Bucky's. And so it's super interesting. I mean, I find it. I mean, I'll go by and visit there and just check it out. But it's pretty cool.
Let me ask you this: when you were at school at UAH and you were in marketing, right? I know you were computer science and you changed. Is that any sort of case study? Did you do any sort of case study on something like a Bucky's or a Chuck E. Cheese or the insurance companies that all have these characters?
Yeah.
You got Emu and you've got the Geico lizard.
Yeah.
Is that something you've studied?
Yeah, I mean, so we did a couple different case studies for sure at UAH. It was definitely a weird time for my schooling at UAH because I was in the midst of the pandemic. And so I would say 95% of my college was online. I went to classes at UAH for maybe a semester before the pandemic, and then all at Calhoun, it was all online. And so like I was working full time, I was having jobs, and then doing the podcast, and then going to school online. And so really like the workload and like the experiences of necessarily like the course themselves was probably a little bit geared differently than what it would have been like if I was in person.
Yeah.
We did a couple different case studies, but none really on that sort of like creating a brand with a character. And I think that's a super interesting thing because, I mean, there is such well-known brands. I mean, there's podcasts that How I Built This podcast had the Chuck E. Cheese guy on, and he also founded, I think, maybe Atari, if I'm saying, if I'm correct on that. I might be wrong, but he created some sort of other, I want to say it was Atari. And so it's super interesting just to see like how, I mean, places in town have even done it with Fat Sammy's. They created their brand around that tiki man. And so like they've kind of created that brand, and the whole atmosphere itself is really geared towards that. And so I think they're starting to see that more and more within marketing, within brands, because it's hard to be distinguishable on social media without having that. I think creating that character kind of allows you to be that distinguished entity.
Yeah. And I'm fascinated by it. And the next thing I want to and part of asking this is I think there's still something missing in Huntsville that you see in other parts of the country. But a truck stop, there's the truck stops like Love's, Pilot, and some of those, but then, and they are not like they're kind of like a Bucky's. They're big and they have a lot of pumps, and of course they're probably more there to serve the trucker. But then you start looking at Bucky's and what makes it work. Well, and by the way, if anybody doesn't know what we're talking about, and it's not spelled the way you think, it's Buccee '.
Yeah.
Right, Bucky's. And it's 120 gas pumps. like Clark said, the cleanest restrooms you're going to come across. They have pulled pork, they have brisket, they've got probably praline pecans.
I mean, it's
shopping.
It's insane. The place itself it's an experience to go and like see just how traffic is able to work in such a place that big. And I think what Bucky's also kind of realized is that, like you said, they have all these other gas stations that are huge that service the truckers, service the people that are driving across country. But there's really nothing that's like a nice experience for the actual, maybe more of a consumer side of it, the actual the individual that's traveling with their family. And I think people will honestly go out of their way to travel and to hit a Bucky's just because of the experience. They know it's going to be fantastic. They can stay there. They can get everything they want. It's the restaurant. It's the bathrooms. It's the shower. It's all in one, all inclusive, and it's nice.
The one thing that I think is missing, I don't know if you've ever heard of Sheetz or Wawa, but and the closest thing here would be like a Witch. So wherever there's a Witch and there's like there's gas station there too. What seems to be missing that may enter into the landscape here would be you kind of come in as a consumer, you can get your gas, there's the snacks, and then there's a few more healthy options. You're going to go up and maybe find the pre-made sandwiches and a fruit cup or some salads. But then there's the short order concept.
Okay.
Where you're going in, it's almost like going to a Subway, and if you want a deli sandwich, and you can customize that to like the nth degree on a touch screen, or a burger or chicken tenders or whatever. So they really have this menu where people are now preferring, they come to the gas station to get lunch because they prefer the ingredients and such over, the Subways and the Chipotles and stuff like that. That's the one area, but it's not nearly as big as the Bucky's, of course. But then they also have the clean restrooms.
Yeah.
And they might have some other offerings. But I'm just always fascinated by, when the market research that goes into kind of a business owner of like, hey, where's the next franchise going to be? In the case of a Bucky's, it's got to be off the interstate.
Yeah.
Right.
Huge piece of land.
And off the major interstate, not necessarily 565 heading into Huntsville. Right. And I think as a traveler, the number one thing, especially on a female's mind, in my opinion, is I want to have a clean restroom.
Yeah. And safety. I mean, I don't think people have ever been worried about going to a Bucky's and being safe.
Right.
And so it's like one of those things. It's like they have everything I need. I'm not worried about, okay, is this gas station close to somewhere to get food? Like they have food too. Yeah. And it's safe. And so I think that's one of those things. They've created this brand that works really well. I mean, I don't think it'd be the first. I don't think the things that even you mentioned too about like not yet in Huntsville, I would not be shocked if in the next 5 years we have them. And we're having these conversations of like, remember when we first mentioned that 5 years ago and now they're here. Yeah. I mean, that's just kind of the trajectory that Huntsville's on right now.
So what do you think? I know you grew up here, and we'll talk about your time at Whitesburg Christian Academy, right? That's where you went to high school. You met your wife there, high school sweetheart, right? You're married now. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
It's been 2 years or
year and a half. Year and a half.
Okay. But I think I've heard you mention in interviewing others that it really hasn't been until the last 5 to maybe 7 years that Huntsville's really kind of not necessarily gotten over the hump, but has really just kind of exploded with like a vision.
Yeah.
Now, I've had Chad Emerson on the program, who was the CEO of Downtown Huntsville. He's since moved on to the Huntsville City Football Club, the MLS Next team. What do you attribute that to? Having been a native here, you've met a lot of people, you've interviewed a lot of people. What is that really attributed to where Huntsville kind of went like, all right, we're going next level here?
I mean, I think Huntsville's always had the infrastructure behind it to be that next level. I mean, just the having the Redstone Arsenal and all the government entities, Research Park. I mean, I think they celebrated 60 years this year.
Yeah.
And so they've always had the infrastructure around to have something huge happen. There's always been money coming into Huntsville. They've always had that readiness. But I think it's just, it's contributing to a lot of the other surrounding cities. I think that even when I had Chad on as well, and talked about what other cities are doing and how they were able to envision, hey, like I think this could work for Huntsville in a different capacity of some sort. People always talk about the Nashvilles, the Chattanooga. And so I think a lot of that is just people had realized that, hey, Huntsville has the infrastructure behind it to support this.
Yeah.
Now, what is it that Huntsville needs? Well, we really don't have any of this. The downtown area needs to be revitalized. All the Low Mill and Lincoln Mill, having that whole new projects going on there in those areas, has really just expanded what Huntsville has and what Huntsville has to offer, and just like the places and the businesses that can be successful here in Huntsville.
Was it just a matter of those either elected officials, those serving on the town councils, or people like a Chad who worked for an entity like down Huntsville? Was it kind of the people just as a collective having that vision and seeing that?
I think it's the people like the Chads and like the elected officials as well. Just having, I think a lot of that is what Huntsville's been able to do, is bring in people from other cities to be on in those positions and in those roles, to say like, my city had this and these are some of the things that worked well, but also like here's what didn't work well, we should probably not do.
Yeah.
And I think it's also having the hindsight of saying Huntsville's a little different than Nashville and Chattanooga and Atlanta. So not everything that works there is going to work here. And I think having that hindsight of and that foresight of just saying, hey, yes, this really worked well for them, and this huge campaign they were able to work and do and everything like that. Well, like Huntsville just might maybe not be the right fit, but this other thing they did would really work. Let's give this a try. Let's double down on this.
Yeah. All right, so take me back to the beginning. I don't always ask my guests this, but since you're born and raised here, what are your first memories of being a boy? Just also all of a sudden being aware of your surroundings and your family. And
so I grew up in South Huntsville, and so really in South Huntsville the joke is, and it's still I think and somewhat the joke with more and more things coming, that I always say is the places to eat are chicken, and burgers, and those are the only three options you had in South Huntsville, and a lot of it is still true. More and more things are coming, more and more chicken places and more burger places, but there's more and more coming to South Huntsville. So I grew up in that area, and so going downtown or going to University Drive was always like a trip almost. It was never like at that time it was like it's so far away, but in reality it's really not that far. It just seems so far to me.
So do you remember some of those distinctly, like where you were as a family heading?
Yeah, I remember going to
a special Friday dinner
before like Jones Valley and like Longhorn opened in Jones Valley. The only Longhorn was on University Drive, and we really liked it, so we would travel to University Drive to eat at that Longhorn. Obviously there was no Cheddar's, no Mid-City. It was the mall was there, and so it's a whole different experience. And then seeing too, like my aunt lives downtown on Eustis, and so like I would go over and hang out with them, and we'd walk to the square and go eat places. There used to be a place on the square called Wild Rose Cafe. It's like a little breakfast place that me and her son, who's the same age as me, would walk up there, 8, 9, maybe 10 years old, walk up there, have breakfast, pancake, sausage, bacon, and then walk back to our house. Yeah. We always go to Harrison Brothers. Harrison Brothers is like the staple.
Yeah, sure.
Things have rotated around the square, but it was never a place either that you really were at in the evenings, or at least I wasn't aware. And I was thinking about that on the way here. It was, I don't know if things existed that I would have enjoyed, like if people were my age when I was 10, like I'm 23. If when I was 10, 23-year-olds had to, like, if there was things to do that I enjoy now as being 23 when I was 10, or if there really wasn't. I don't know about that. And I think it's like, you just don't know what you don't know. So I think a lot of times in high school, most of my friends were like, hey, I'm gonna get as far away from Huntsville as possible. We just don't have anything cool, anything fun to do, nothing like that. And I think that is maybe the case. We maybe didn't have, maybe stuff started coming. But I think too, it's like we just maybe weren't aware of what you could do when you were in college in Huntsville. Yeah. Because it just wasn't a part of our knowledge.
Or if you just lacked any sort of like transportation.
Yeah. Probably a little bit of both.
It's hard to get around if you could have a bike, but are there safe roads to travel or trails to travel? Or, once you get a car, everything kind of opens up from there, right?
Yeah, and I think I remember going to dances downtown and and being so confused of how to navigate downtown.
Really?
And it's not like now it's like I live downtown, I work downtown. And so navigating it is like the back of my hand. But I remember in high school, like we had to find some place to park. Now, where are we going to park? Now, which roads are one way? I have no idea. And like, well, the event's here and we need to go here, but we don't want to park too far away. Like it was just, it was a chore.
Yeah.
And it was like, I mean, I was 18. And it's like, so it was so funny then. And I think for me too, it was like, I wanted to find out and start the podcast because I wanted to know about things, but I also want to make sure my friends knew about things. Because at the end of the day, it's like, I want them to come back to Huntsville. I don't want them to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like they're super talented at what they do and what they're getting their degree in. Huntsville could use that. And there's a lot of fun. Like, let me talk about those.
Yeah. So for those who aren't familiar with Harrison Brothers, and I am, in fact, you've interviewed Jonathan Fowler. I've interviewed Jonathan Fowler of Foul Wow Designs. Love Jonathan. One of the Harrison Brothers, the pants store, carry his shirts.
Yeah.
I'm wearing a Havoc shirt today, but I have several of his. Explain Harrison Brothers, but also explain maybe how it was then when you were a kid, your early memories. You were just saying you used to go there versus to kind of what they offer now.
Yeah, I mean, so it's very similar to what it was when I was a kid and growing up. I mean, the esque of Harrison Brothers is that it offers local Huntsville made products, so clothing, food, crafts, stuff like that. And so like they've always had that image and that sort of like, hey, this is what we do. They've expanded. At least I think they've expanded. At one point, I just remember them having more space, and I thought that maybe they didn't. But they have the two different sides. It's one of those things now. Like the offering is like anything from Foul Wow. Foul Wow has a lot of stuff there. Jonathan stuff. They have a lot of. I mean, I've gotten Christmas gifts. They have puzzles. They have like books that are written in from Huntsville, like writers and stuff about Huntsville. And so the esque of the store hasn't really changed. If anything, it's just the offerings. And I think that's due, in fact, to the fact that Huntsville's grown. And so there's more and more things that people are creating in Huntsville that then they can offer at Harrison Brothers. And so I think they've almost, I think with the expansion, if they did actually expand, has just given them the chance to present and show you more of what Huntsville has to offer. And I think that's one of the things, like whenever I have people in town, like family that come to town, I'm like, I have to take you to Harrison Brothers because he's like your one-stop shop.
Yeah.
Like if you want to know some things that are created here in Huntsville, here's everything that's here. And then also we're downtown on the square. We can walk around and show you all this other cool stuff.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't remember when they were first established, but I would imagine way back, it was probably a hardware store.
Yes.
And you probably went in there and even probably bought like a wagon for your kid for Christmas or, a BB gun.
Yeah, and they do some cool things.
Like a general store.
Yeah, and they do some cool things now that I think some people maybe aren't even aware of. Is it's either like the last Saturday of the month or the first Saturday of the month, maybe even a different Saturday. It's one of the Saturdays in the month, they do a old like restoration sale.
Yeah.
And they'll open up the basement. You can walk down to the basement and shop through old doors and old doorknobs and hinges and frames and all sorts of cool stuff, and you get to go in the basement. And then even above, so I've done a couple podcasts above.
Really?
And they have it upstairs, and they have like a little couch and like a little like meeting room. And so I've recorded podcast, and then the lady even showed me the upstairs of that, which is 2 stories above like the shop, and that has like the old stuff from the Harrisons. So it's like still up there in the attic, just basically waiting. And so it's super cool to see the history, because then you can kind of see those stages of, this is what it looked like, and then you walk downstairs and like, this is what it looks like now in 2022.
Yeah. In Virginia, we lived in western Loudoun County at one time, and there was a town called Purcellville, and it had a store very similar to Harrison Brothers, but it was even more, even to today's date, as we talk now, they don't use computers in any way.
Wow.
They handwrite. So if I walk up there and all I bought was like a thing of nails, and I had like a hammer, the guy would just write hammer and like nails. And it wasn't like, he doesn't even write like they're 2 1/4 inch or 1 inch. And then I don't know how they do their inventory, but they have saved a ton of money over the years by just not going there and just saying, we're going to handwrite everything. And it was one of those where a salesperson comes up, greets you, no matter what you're there for, they help you, and then they bring you up and they write it all up.
That's awesome.
And they're using a little hand calculator to like calculate everything, but it has such charm.
Yes.
And so when just like you said, when guests came into town, we always wanted to take them to, in this case, it was called Nichols Hardware. And, it was kind of still a hardware store, but there was still it's been there for like 100-something years, And so Harrison Brothers, when you kind of just step and you can imagine what it might have been like in the 40s or the 50s, right? And we watched so many movies that try to capture that time period.
Yeah, and it's cool because like you can see like if you look at old pictures of the square, like Harrison Brothers is the only thing that's still the same.
Yeah.
And that's what's cool to me. It's like the buildings have changed, what the occupants have changed, but Harrison Brothers still remains.
Yeah.
And it's like you can even walk back and you can see kind of like the Harrison Brothers desks, and they have like the old register that they still use. So it's one of those things that's like as Huntsville's continuing to grow and have new things, seeing something like Harrison Brothers that's like still preserving the old and the history is great. It makes me so excited.
Yeah. Let's do this, Clark. Let's go to your high school.
Okay.
Let's talk about Whitesburg Christian Academy. But real quick, give me a synopsis of elementary school. Where'd you go?
Mm-hmm. So I went to Mountain Gap Elementary.
Where's that?
South Huntsville.
Okay.
So, and then I went Mountain Gap Middle, and then I went to Grissom for half a year and transferred to Whitesburg Christian Academy halfway through my freshman year.
Okay. And what kind of prompted that?
It was just too big for me. It wasn't like one of those things that I just really enjoyed. I think the friends that I had, and like some of them are still friends today, or I would still consider a friend. But it was a little too big for me, and I wanted to kind of go to like a more of an smaller classes. I mean, we'll talk about it. My class size at the academy was ridiculously small, and so that was something that kind of prompted me. And so it was kind of just like that. Hey, I'll give this a try, and it actually worked out really well. I knew a couple people that already went to the academy that were in my grade, and so it kind of worked.
And so how many were in your graduating class?
I graduated with 18.
18. Okay. The episode 37, which I haven't released yet, this will probably release in the next 3 weeks. I asked you earlier, about 4 weeks ahead.
Mm-hmm.
I'm about 3 weeks.
Okay.
I got basically after tonight, I'll have 3 in the can just to sit and think about and edit, right? And I don't know about you with editing, but it's something I often will just dread.
Yes.
Because you can see like there's never be an end. I could do this, I could do that. I could do that. But her graduating class was like 18.
Wow.
And my wife's not in the studio tonight, but she was like 27. So really small.
Very, very small class.
All right. So what I want to do right away is you were a cross country track runner?
Yes.
All right. Let's pull this up.
Okay.
You should be able to see this. Now this is the record book.
Okay. Wow.
And now you didn't run the 2 mile. And if you did, you're not in the records. But when we get down to 3 miles, there you are, 4.
Wow.
Now, I have a question right away. Maybe this is because this is track and not cross country, but is there a reason it's not a 5K?
So we had a couple. So this is probably cross country. So we had there was a couple races we would do in town that were technically a 3 mile race, not a 3.1.
Okay.
And so there was maybe 2 races we would do a year that were a 3 mile race technically. Like we would say 5K like on our books, but technically on like the actual record books, they were 3 miles.
Now 2016 here. So was that your junior year?
It was.
Okay. So how do you feel about where you rank here?
I did not know I was 4th. I was 20. My junior year was probably my better year for cross country. My senior year, you kind of get ready to be done with school, and so you're just ready to be done with running and done with racing and all that good stuff. So my junior year was definitely my better year for cross country and probably for track. Actually, I think senior year for track was pretty good. It was a pretty good year. And so I don't know if any of those are on here or not, but we'll see.
Well, down here, I think you're in the 5,000 meters. Yes, number 13.
Okay.
Now, please help me with the conversion. 5,000 meters is what?
3.1 miles. It's the 5.
That is the 5K.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's 3.1. So yeah, the timing, the time should not be too drastically 1940 for a 3 mile and 1848. Yeah.
And that was the year before. That's when you were a sophomore. 2015, you ran that.
Interesting.
Now let's do this. We're going to go up here, and this seems to be the specific. These are all your events that they have. I don't know if you've looked at this before.
I have not.
But I guess you ran the 400 meters at one point.
Yep.
In the Huntsville Panther Invitational. And I guess that means you finished 48th. That's not your strong suit.
Okay, no, not my strong suit.
But here, the 800 meters, you finished second. And that's at the state sectional.
Yeah, that was my senior year. I got a gold, maybe a silver in that, maybe a gold in that. I'm not sure.
Were you expecting to finish top 3 there?
So what was interesting is at the sectional meet, which was in Winfield that year, I was in 4 events, which are probably all on there. I was in the 800 meter. I was a 4x8 runner. I was a 1600 meter, and I was a high jump my senior year.
Yep.
And so I won gold in everything but the 800, and I only lost by like seconds. Like I fell across the line when he fell across the line, and it was seconds, milliseconds.
There's your high jump.
Yeah. I think I actually hold it the school record for high jump from guys, I think. And I think my sister-in-law holds it for the women's high jump.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Did your brother go to Whitesburg as well?
No, he graduated from Grissom, so he's 6 years older than I am.
Okay. Anything in particular that you, I don't know, want to share with related to this? Either you were an underdog or like just something that's like, man, like when we all have our athletic highlights, that we dwell upon and share with others who probably don't want to hear it. What's yours? Anything from here?
Well, I think running in general was not something I was interested in, or like I did not enjoy. And so like I was like, I'll never do cross country or track. But the coach was always like, hey, I think he'd be good. Paul Richardson has a lot of the records for our school. He was like, I think you should do it. I think you'd be good at it. And so I started doing it, and I actually really, really enjoyed doing it. And so it's pretty funny to see my senior year doing high jump. It was just because no one was doing it.
Yeah.
And so often I could score points because the amount of people in 1A that were doing high jump were so little that I could get points for the team. And so I was like, well, I could do high jump.
Yeah.
Like I could always jump high. I think in high school I also played basketball, and so I was always able to jumping high was something I could do really. Like I was able to dunk some in high school. So like it was fun to do it, and it was one of those things that it was like I'll do it. It's like in doing those relays was in track and cross country were a lot of fun. And like then I said I would never run again, and then so I spent like my freshman year of college not running, not doing anything. And I was like, I really want to get back to running. And so now it's more of a chore to run than it used to be. It used to be pretty easy to go out and run 5-6 miles a day for practice in the heat. Now it's a little tougher. It's a little more motivation on my end to go out and go run. But it's still like the way that I actually like get away from work. And I normally listen to podcasts. I actually listen to a lot of audiobooks when I'm running. And so it's still the thing I use for exercise more than anything. It's something that I'm familiar with. It's something that's easy because it's nothing about going to the gym and like being around. I don't like that. Yeah. And so going on a run when I'm by myself and I get to travel through Montesano, I get to travel through downtown, I get to do all that kind of stuff is still what I enjoy. So it's funny to pull that up. I never really have looked at that. So.
Oh, wow. See, I didn't grow up in this era where like if other sports would be on max preps or, there's so many, outlets, I guess, for lack of a better term, that cover or have a place to publish stats.
Yes.
And the high schools are encouraged because it just helps them and promotes them, right? They'll send it to this newspaper and that newspaper and this outlet. So it's just like kind of everywhere. But I'm always, I would have had it memorized, right? I would have been like, oh, looking at that all the time, right?
Yeah, it was a cool thing. I think when
you must be a humble guy.
They use a mile split is a big one for track, and so like when I was in high school, that's like the thing I was always on. It was to see where I ranked, see how the races went, who's expected to do the best at the race. So I was really into it then. Like I would be like, okay, the coach thinks I can get probably top 10. Okay, who's the people that are running that are in like the 7 to 10? Like, what are their times? Okay, well, I think I feel better that I could probably get better than this, but I should probably be kind of near this guy. And I'd point the guy out, and I'd kind of be near him. I think running track was one of those things too that it was a different mindset than cross country. I mean, there's the distance, but I think cross country really helped for most of my sports, and that's really where a lot of people at the academy did cross country was because it helped with all the other sports. I mean, you're running. You always had to run 100 miles over the summer. And so over the summer you would track your mileage, you would send it to the coach, and then you would train in like the heat. And so you'd be running 5-6 miles a day, different, sprint workouts, long workouts, whatever that might look like. And what's funny about the academy is like we don't have a track. So we'd run in the parking lot. So like our distance and like through our fields. And so like our distances were very much like, oh, you get past that one tree and you take a left and then you take a right past that other tree. And we could all know, okay, yeah, 100%. I know exactly where that is. Yeah. But like to the average person coming out to run with us, it'd be like, you have no clue what you're running. And we'd all use our watches and you'd finish the 3 mile warm up. And they'd be like, there's no way that's 3 miles. And you like stop it. You're like, see, it's 3 miles. Like you just kind of knew it. And it was just us running through. And like we'd run 1,600 and we'd run mile and 800 through our parking lot during carpool. And so not only are you trying to run through a parking lot and turn at the right time, you're also trying not to get run over.
Right.
And so it was a battle. And then so I think then going out to like a track where it's like official and you're wearing spikes made us a little bit better just because we had that, hey, we're wearing tennis shoes in our parking lot and trying not to get run over, and you have a track that you're practicing on. And I think that's still like kind of like when I was there, the girls team won state 3 times.
Really?
And then they've won. I mean, the girls team was fantastic. And the guys team in cross country, we would always get, second at sectionals most of the time, and we do pretty well at state. And so it was always like one of those things. This track was a really, really important thing for the school, and it was fun to be a part of it at that time.
I started running about 5 years ago just to get ready for like a Ragnar, and then I had never been a runner, so I fell in love with it through just training for that Ragnar, and similar to you. And I look at it wasn't just about running. It was, this is a chance for me to decompress and to think, whatever. I wasn't doing a podcast at the time, but just work and family and stuff. And now when I run, it's kind of like I'll use it as a time to do research.
Yeah.
I'll listen to your episodes. So I just try to use my time constructively. But I had this route in this old neighborhood, and it was kind of like I'd hit a certain mailbox on a certain route, and that was 6 miles or it was 5 miles, and I had all these routes in my head.
Yeah.
And I just knew, like, okay, when I get up to that street and that mailbox, I've gone this far.
Yeah. Right? And like, if I get to this far and I feel pretty good, I could probably go one more mailbox to the left and then take a right on the next mailbox, and it'd be a little bit longer. And like that was the way we did it. And so it was so much, and I enjoy, and like I could still go out there and I know the routes that we would run and how long each one was. Cause it's just like one of those things. It's like, we got so used to doing it.
Do you do the Madison Mud Run? Have you heard of that?
I have not heard of that.
Oh, dude, it's the Madison Academy.
Okay. In
April, they have a mud run, and so are you familiar with their campus at all?
A little bit.
I guess that's right off of is it Browns Ferry? What is
Madison?
No, it's Old Madison Pike.
Old Madison Pike, I think.
Yeah, right, kind of like where Slaughter crosses. But so the first part of it is like you leave the stadium, then you kind of run through their parking lot, and you run through some grounds, and then it gets interesting. Then you cross the creek, and we were really lucky that it rained. Like it rained buckets the night before, so it was a proper mud run.
Yeah,
like they did everything they could to make it muddy, and it was it was a 5K essentially, right, with mud. But they have all these back trails that it's that forested area that then butts up against John Paul II's campus. So there's all these trees, and they have like these equestrian trails and. It was, you got to do it next year. Yeah. It was awesome.
UAH did a mud run, we would always call it in high school, and we would always run. And that was actually one of the 3 mile races because it was technically not a 5K. And it was around UAH's campus, and there's like a little creek that runs in the back. It was all trails, and it was a really, really cool race. Some people's it was their favorite. For me, it wasn't my favorite. I was not in the, hey, let's get super muddy and continue to run in this heat. But it was definitely some people's favorite race, and they looked forward to that race the most. It was a fun race, and I think it through the years it definitely varied as far as how muddy you get somewhere it's so muddy and so wet that you're slipping and sliding and you can't get out of the water to it hasn't rained in a week and it's just hard mud and you're able to climb right out. Now
your wife, I think I saw it. Is it Khaki?
Khaki, Cacky.
Okay,
yeah.
So let's talk before we go too far out. Beyond high school. High school sweetheart. When did you meet her? When did you first lay eyes on Khaki?
So she played basketball too, and so I played basketball. So when I transferred there my freshman year, you have to wait a year before you can play sports, and so I didn't play sports until my junior year. And so but I was able to practice with the teams, and so I'd practice with basketball. She was on the basketball team. I would even travel and go to the games too. I just had to sit at the bench and watch. And so we knew each other through basketball. She's a year older than me, and so there was the school is so small at the time, and the school has gotten bigger since, but so small at the time that we really, I never had a class with her. My 18 people I went to every single class with, except for math and electives. So two classes,
a cohort.
Yeah, 2 classes out of the whole day were with different people, but the rest of them were the same people every day. And so we got to know each other a little bit through basketball. We started dating we went to her junior prom, so I was a sophomore at the time. And then we started dating her senior year, my junior year. And we dated through high school. And then she went to Mississippi College in Clinton, Mississippi, and we continued to date. And then we dated through, she graduated. Oh, man, she took her 3 years at college. So she graduated in December of 2019, maybe? Maybe if that's right, I think. That sounds right. And so then she's back at home working, and then I was finishing up school. I graduated in May of 2021. And then we got married in May of 2021.
So who pursued her? Who pursued who? in this?
Probably, I would say me. If she listens to this, she might think it's her, but I would say it's me. There was a couple awkward, like, you know, you have those awkward high school moments, and like I can think of one right off the bat that's super funny, and she'll think it's funny that I'm mentioning this, but they like I guess it was her senior year, so we were dating, and they like were joking about on the bus on the way back from a game, and someone got like a ring pop, and they like joked about having me propose to Khaki and getting a photo of it. So like there's a picture of us. I think she has it probably, of me on a knee on the bus with the ring pop. And then, you know, fast forward 4 years and I actually do propose. But it's a funny thing. And I think we were kind of that, not necessarily with such a small school, everybody knows what everyone's doing kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so it was just kind of it was like like Clark's dating Khaki and she's, you know, a year older. Like it was just kind of like a funny thing, you know, and then throughout high school and then college and then now we're married, and so it's super interesting. But I think I would say it was me, and I don't know if that was the first time of pursuing, but it was definitely a memorable moment for sure.
Did when you actually proposed to her, was there a joke in there where you also used a ring pop?
There's been a couple photos since where like we've staged some like funny photos like that. Like I think within the last year, we like have a photo of me where I proposed with like a purple cup on a knee, and so we've joked around it, and like that photo still gets circulated for like showers and stuff. We had that photo in like the circulation, so you could see like a photo of us in high school. But it's cool too to see like us going to all these dances and dating throughout the years, and like how much we've changed.
Yeah,
from since being 17 to now 23.
So you've talked about athletics. Did you also have part-time jobs? Kind of what was the expectation on you to earn money or to just learn how to work and, you know, develop a work ethic?
Yeah, so I've had a job since I've been 16, and so like when I turned 16, my mom was like, if you want to have gas in your car to go places, you're gonna get a job to make gas. I'm like, okay. Yeah. So I got a job working at Pet Depot when I was 16. So I think I started there. My birthday's in February. I think I started there in April. Like I was one of the, like they opened in April the doors in South Huntsville, and so I started working there. Worked there for a year, and then I went to work at Whitesburg Baptist Church as a custodian. Throughout my, I guess, that would have been my junior and senior year, halfway through junior, all of senior year. And then I worked there a little bit into my freshman year at UAH, or at Calhoun. And then I went from there to the Ledges as a server.
Wow.
Worked there for 6 months. Then the church called me back for a different position, being in the offices and helping them out. And so I went back to the church for a year. Then I went back to the Ledges for 6 months. Then that's when the pandemic happened. Got an internship, computer science, with Georgia Tech Research Institute for approximately 3 months, maybe 2 months. Did not enjoy the job and left, and then had like a break with no jobs, and then worked at the Ledges again some, and then had an internship my senior year of college at Holtz Leather.
Now, are you a golfer?
I am. I do. It's definitely something that, like, when I was there, we had the opportunity to be able to play on Mondays when it was closed to the public. And so I kind of got into it a little bit. And then slowly over the last, probably really over the last maybe 5-6 months, maybe a year, have I really started playing more. Like I'm playing Wednesday.
Okay.
So my brother-in-law's in town, so we're going to go play. And then his cousin, and like there's a group of us going to go play. And so we're going to go out to Gunner's Landing on Wednesday. But it's one of those things like I really enjoy, and I think for the business that I'm in, it's one of those things that's going to bode me very well moving forward. Yeah. And it's like one of the only sports that you can play when you're 80. Like there's people up there that are like the owners are 80 years old at the Ledges, and they're still playing golf. So it's like I can do that when I'm 80. I can't go out and run 3 or 5 miles when I'm 80. I might be able to, but I can definitely go golf.
It's like that in pickleball now, right?
Yes, and pickleball's coming to Huntsville. So,
you know, I've played golf most of my life, and I think I was 12 when I was like in 6th grade. My mom we had early release on Mondays in elementary school. I think I don't know if it was an excuse for the teachers to go home and take a nap. In theory, they were supposed to prepare their week, and we always got out like 2 hours early on Mondays. Wow. So I would mow the lawn Saturday. She would give me $10, and then on Monday she would drop me off at the golf course. I would play 9 holes because it cost $7.50. Wow. And then I would usually buy a hot dog when I was done for $2, and then I had 50 cents to call home.
There you go.
Right? And then just in case like the answering machine picked up and I lost a quarter, I always had to have 2 quarters. But one time, this was when AOL, so now I'm like more in high school, 1992, 93, and I played golf. I got paired up. I would just go as a single. I would just show up because I just love to play. And by then, I kind of knew a lot of the guys at the course, and sometimes I get to play for free or they give me a discount or whatever. But I played with the original 3. They were the first 3 like sales executives for AOL, and they covered the whole world.
Wow.
And I'm just listening to them. I'm a junior in high school, and I'm listening to them talk about their territory. And one has like, all of Europe, all of Africa. One has all of North America. One has South America. Wow. And I just thought, like, man, those guys, if they just held on, because they were not happy.
Yeah.
That's just work for you, right? And maybe someone else was infringing upon their territory, or customers at the time, they instead of getting like, let's say Buckees.com, it had to be Buckees.aol.com.
Mm-hmm.
And companies didn't want AOL in their domain name. And so they were just frustrated at like their inability to sell something, like these domains or whatever to these companies. And I thought about it later, of course, when they sold to Time Warner. Like, man, those guys.
I hope they stayed.
They were probably, each 28 years old.
Yeah.
Kind of just starting out. And I say that because just as you made a comment, everybody I ever played with were like, you just keep playing golf, man. It's going to pay off for you. It's going to be something you use as a tool, in your life.
It's by far the hardest sport I've ever played.
I wish I had started when I was your age. And I remembered that.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. Because there's so many fundraising opportunities through golf tournaments and things.
Huge. And it's one of those things that's like the amount of business that takes place on a golf course is huge. And so being able to go out there and actually put together, like, not saying I'm going to be the next Tiger Woods, but I want to be able to play well enough to be like, okay, I can get you can get invited to go play golf. Cause like, there's like that level of like, if you're not at least at that, like you're going to, I don't want to hold them back from playing golf. Like I don't want typically a 4 hour, 4 hours of golf to be 6 hours because I'm just so bad at golf. And so it's one of those things that's like, I've started getting lessons a little bit. And so like, that's helped tremendously. Really, the next step for me is to be able to save the money to invest in getting clubs fitted for me.
Yeah.
Because I think the value that will have long term is huge.
Yeah.
Make you actually like, but there's always that. I tell everybody it's like I played a couple weeks ago for a retreat actually, and throughout the day it was decent golf. Like I had a couple good shots here, a couple good shots here, a couple bad shots here, and you always have that one shot around that makes you want to come back.
Oh yeah.
And the shots for me were on the last 2 holes. I hit the best driver of my entire life back to back. And it's those moments when it's so cold and you're just like ready to be done playing golf that you're just like, I think I could do this again.
Yeah.
And it makes you want to come back. And
Absolutely.
then you have days where like you don't play well at all, and you might have like you're having to like scrap around to be like, okay, well, like hole 7 and hole 12 were really good shots. Okay, that was a good day.
Yeah.
But like there's key pivotal moments that you're like, man, I'll come back and play golf. That was a lot of fun.
That's like the golf gods smiling on you and I think they do it on purpose to make sure, let's give him a good shot on one of the last holes so he'll come back.
Yes, and I best driver shot of my life, outdrove everyone I was playing with, and it did it twice on hole 17 and hole 18, and it was just like, yeah, I could do this again.
Do you know the difference between precision and accuracy?
Not really.
And I use golf as a way to kind of hammer home this analogy. But so like what happens is you get better and better. So like you can be precise but not accurate.
Yeah.
Or accurate, not precise, right? So you want to be, let's say what's going to happen is if you're shooting 100 and as you start practicing more, well then at some point you're going to probably break 90 and shoot 87, but then you're also still probably capable of shooting a 98 or 99.
Yeah.
So and as you keep playing and playing, then it kind of tightens.
Yeah.
Where, you're getting a little bit more accurate around kind of where you shoot, but your precision then it's not as scattered.
Yeah.
Your precision is more like, okay, I broke 90. Now if I have a bad day, it's going to be like a 91. Yeah. I'm not going to blow up and shoot a 99. Right. And then you get to like, you break 80 and then, and you go further and further down and it starts to get tighter and tighter and tighter where, if you're shooting like a 72, well, a bad day is probably a 74 and a good day is like a 69.
Yeah.
So the precision and accuracies really start to like line up.
Yeah. And I think like it's one of those things that's, like I said, it's such a tough sport. And every time I go out, like I feel like I learn new, like playing with people too that have been playing for a long time and the little things that they give you for pointers is almost as helpful, if not more helpful, than getting a lesson from a pro.
Yeah.
Because you're just like, oh, I would never have thought in that moment. Because like they are so good as a pro that they just try to teach you, they teach you the basics. They teach you like the general, in most cases, do this.
Yeah.
When you get on the course, it's like, that's that's what's going to be like at most of the time on the course. So like you're playing with somebody and they give you, hey, most of the time when I'm hitting this kind of shot, I'm leaning more forward and I'm going to get, I never would have thought of doing that. And you hit great shots moving forward. And it's like, oh, thank you. Check.
The best advice I can give you is just practice, practice, practice. You can't hit enough golf balls. Mm-hmm. You know, even when you're playing well, you just got to keep at it.
Yeah.
And, you know, you take some lessons, like you said, and then when you're practicing, make sure you're giving yourself a chance to it's muscle memory. Mm-hmm. No matter what you're learning, could be your grip and you have a new grip. Well, then you need to practice enough where that becomes, it's not like it's conscious.
Yeah.
You do it. And it takes thousands of golf balls, thousands at times. All right. So let's transition now out of Whitesburg.
Okay.
It's funny. I did find some stuff on you in basketball, but it was a weird clip on Huddle.
Okay.
It was just a clip of you. I think it was more of just showing your speed.
Maybe. Okay.
Where you there was like a loose ball.
And I've
they run down and I'm like, that's it?
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's other footage if like with Huddle, typically you have to be a member of a team or something, right?
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure for that, it's like if someone made that thing and then like accidentally left it, that's the only thing that's going to be left and all the actual footage is going to be gone.
Right.
So
you've seen that clip
I was
too?
not. I was not. So my basketball skills were never. I was never the one to go out and score lots of points. Like that was just not me.
Yeah.
I was a really, really great defender. I could rebound really well. I'm not the tallest guy. I'm like 5'11", maybe 6 foot on a good day. And so I was never going out to score double digits. I think I may have had a double maybe twice ever in my career. But I was always a great defender. Like the coach would always knew. My senior year, we had a new coach who actually had on the podcast.
Yeah.
Rob Murphy. Yeah. And so when he came in, I started my junior year, and my senior year, I was the sixth man right off the bench. But he always knew if there was a really good player that they had, or like a really great, they knew he was going to score a lot of points and someone needed to hold him, that was my position. That was my role. And I valued the work of, I knew that I was not a good scorer. Like I was not known. He is not worried about me going out there and scoring 25 points. Never happened. But he needed me to defend. And so I valued that. And that's why I put all my effort in. And so I tirelessly to be the best defender I could be.
Yeah. It makes me think of two sports movies. Hold on, I'm trying to switch screens here. One was in Hoosiers, and I don't know if you've seen Hoosiers.
It's been a while.
Indiana basketball, but the coach is like, all I need you to do is just guard this guy, like number 52. That's it. I want you to know by the end of the game, what kind of chewing gum he chooses.
Yeah.
Or choose. And then, of course, at the end, he's like, he chose Dentine. Like, just stay on him.
Yes.
And the others, and remember the Titans when they bring Petey over from offense to defense.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I don't play defense. Like, all I want you to do is cover number 23. That's it. But it doesn't matter. Yeah. Just cover 23.
That's it. And there's a couple games where it was just like, I want you to face guard number 12, face guard him the whole time.
Right.
Do not let him get the ball and be so annoying. And it was like, I was that, like, that was my role. Like, no matter where he was, back court, front court,
right.
I was on him. And there was a couple games I can even remember that, like, I had the players get mad at me.
I was going to ask.
Because it was just, they knew, and I was,
get off of me.
And it would be pushing and shoving, and it'd be like, and I loved it. And there was one game in particular that we were playing at home, and there was a player that he was like, I want you to just guard him no matter where he's at on the court. Okay, got it. I can do that. So I'm following him around. He's getting so mad. Starts to push a little bit. We start to push a little bit. And there's like a point where maybe I faked it a little and made it seem like it was a lot worse than it was, whatever it was. But then he gets a technical and I walk over to the coach and my coach gives me a high five. Like, you did exactly what I wanted you to do. Like that was it. Check. And it was like, okay, he already had a couple fouls. Like, he's in foul trouble now. And we're like second quarter. Like, it's not like, it's like fantastic.
Yeah.
And so it was fun. And I enjoyed getting into people's heads, even if they're like, you're not in my head. Like, it was like, they're thinking of it. Like, I'm definitely in their head. And it was a lot of fun.
Now, what about your your older brother? Mm-hmm. Did you do anything with him?
So,
sports wise?
So we were 6 years apart. So right now he's 29. I guess he turns 30 next year. And so we were just so far in different realms. Like growing up, he really wasn't into sports as much as I was. I was always into sports, playing sports throughout elementary. I played baseball a lot growing up, played baseball up until I was able to play sports at the academy. And so we didn't have a baseball team at the academy when I was there. And so like I was always into sports. That was my thing. He's a very, 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 very smart guy. Super, super studious. He was top of his class at Grissom, top of his class in college. He's now him and his wife are doctors in Athens.
Okay.
And so he's a very, very, very smart guy. And so way smarter than I'll ever be. And I'm
You're
okay
a different
with that.
kind of smart.
Yeah, I am 100% okay with that. And so it was always like like I said, we were just so far apart. Like, I mean, when I graduated high school, he graduated high school when I was in elementary school, 6th grade.
I gotcha.
And so, I mean, it was just, we're such different realms.
Yeah.
And so, like, it was like, now it's like, even though he is older than me, now it doesn't seem that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, oh, he's like, we can go do things together and like go hang out. But like in high school, like when you're 6 years apart, and that's just a weird thing. So
let's compare and contrast something here. So you go into Calhoun and UAH and thinking you're going to go into computer science, and you change to marketing. Did he go into college thinking he was going to be wanted to be a doctor?
No, he did not. So he was he went to UAH as well. He did his undergrad there, and he was going to be a pharmacist. And then while he was at UAH, the professors were like, "You're too smart to just be a pharmacist. Like, I think you'd be a fantastic doctor. I think you should go to med school. I think you should do that." He's like, "Okay," and ended up going to UAB for med school. Then did his residency out in Bryan, Texas, and then he met his wife at UAB. And so then they went to Bryan, Texas for residency, and now they're family doctors out in Athens.
What is it? Is that Texas Tech? What's in Bryan?
Yes, yeah. Texas A&M is.
That's Texas A&M.
Is right there.
Okay. All right. So what prompted you? What made you think you were going to go the computer science route?
I think most of my friends were doing computer science. Most of my friends were doing programming. So like, and I know a lot of people in Huntsville are doing it. So I was like, well, that seems like the right fit. I liked programming. Like, I think that was one of those things. Like, I still enjoy it in some capacity right now. And I don't think the programming was the part that I didn't enjoy. School was Calhoun was relatively easy for what I was doing, getting the associates in science. You're not really into that much programming at that time. I had a couple classes maybe. And then at UAH, when I first got there, my junior year, the classes were very, very difficult. And I think that's like, I realized quickly that I don't like this beyond just the class. Like, I think I had to realize myself that it's like, yes, these classes are really hard and like school's gonna be tough no matter what, but I also don't really enjoy doing it. And so like, if it's tough and I don't enjoy doing it, then I'm really not going to want to do it. And so it was just like at that realization, and then getting the internship, which is something I worked all throughout Calhoun trying to get. I would always apply. Like, I was applying to here, but my friends had internships because there was 3 of us that went to 3 others besides myself that went to UAH, and they're an engineer and they have internships. And so I'm like trying to work my magic getting an internship, finally get one. I think it's going to be the best thing ever. Like, I'm going to get this internship. I'm going to work here for 2 years. Great pay, great experience. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to make a great salary. It's going to be fantastic. Like, this is the Huntsville dream.
Marry khaki.
Huntsville dream, have a nice house, do all this good stuff. I get the internship, and nothing to the company itself. They really thoroughly loved what they do. I just thoroughly did not enjoy it at all.
Yeah.
It was just that, computer clicks. It almost seemed to me like it was hey, how long can we go until we talk to people? Was kind of their like goal. Because it was like they just put on their headphones and they would go programming and they would do fixing things and they would love it and they would enjoy it. And the room would be dark lit.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't my thing. And I was like, I want to talk to people. I want to do this. I want to do that. And then it's like, this is not really that kind of cup of tea. And it's like, will this be the case everywhere? Start asking around a little bit. Well, a lot of it's very similar, especially when you're an entry level. It's like, well, that doesn't sound like a fun job. And so I was doing marketing work at the time, actually, not just the podcast. And so I was like, well, I guess I'm going to do marketing. I don't really know if it's like the thing I really want to do, but it's the next right step. And so I ended up dropping all my classes that were computer science, probably in maybe late September, early October, right before the deadline. I remember that. And so had to drop all my classes, change majors, kept I think enough hours to be considered still a full-time student. Finished out the school, then January comes and started doing marketing classes. And then in March is when COVID. So I really only did marketing classes in person at UAH for maybe 2 months.
Gotcha.
And even at that point, there was some classes that would get canceled. Some like, oh, the teacher like she's getting sick or they're getting sick. Like, so like, it's like, we really didn't go to all my classes even then. And then March, and then the rest of school at UAH was all remote.
Yeah.
I never went to campus again. And so that's kind of the marketing, and it seemed like a good fit. There's a lot that I tell people there's a lot that was beneficial about getting a marketing degree, but none of what I do today on a day-to-day basis, I learned through having a degree, not a single drop. And there's not really anything that I can even occasionally I'll pull terms, or like I'll remember something like, oh, this model is called this, and maybe. Mm-hmm. And there's people that there's clients that I have that I've met because I was interviewing for a job with my marketing degree, thinking I was like, okay, I don't know if we're getting this later or not, but when I was getting ready to graduate, I was like, maybe I should just do Beyond Rockets on the side, getting married. Let's have a typical job, and then do Beyond Rockets on the side until it grows. And so I was interviewing at a couple different places, and one of my interviews at a job, they actually didn't hire me for the job, but then called me back and see if they could hire my company to do it or do some stuff with them. And I was like, that's the best case scenario. Yeah, that's better than you hiring me today. And so it was like those moments of just realizing, hey, maybe, and at the time I had never really taken the time for the company to grow. It was always done in college, so I just never had the time to really market it. And so I was like, well, we're covering what we need to cover. The bills are being paid. We have the money to go do things we enjoy. Like, what if I just give this a chance? And then my wife's like, sure, I think you should. Mm-hmm. And so she kind of pushed me to do it. And then knock on wood, I don't plan on ever having a typical job. I love the job I have, and the work-life balance I have is fantastic.
Before we leave completely the computer science realm, give me an idea though, was there a project that you did that you completed? Give me an idea of a program that you created, and in what language was that written in? So
my classes, the only couple classes I did at UAH that were programming wise were C++. And so I had a couple classes in there, and I remember making a whole, oh my goodness, it's like a game. It was a battle. You could pick a character and you'd play, you'd fight this battle, and it had this automated of because of this scenario, then this, if this, then this, all those if then statements. And then it was, I remember that was our big project that year. And it was I started doing UAH classes the summer before my fall semester there, where then I ended up dropping everything. So I was doing one class during the summer, and that was my summer class project, was creating that little fighting game. And then before I was even at UAH, a friend of mine, we both were like, hey, we want to start something. I was still doing podcasts and Beyond Rockets, but I was like, I want to start something. Let's program this website. And we created a website that was going to be called Car Haven. And it was basically like a Car Gurus, if you ever used that, where it would source different sites and bring it to one site. And we'd have the user interface. Because we love to work on cars. We worked on Miata and flipped it while we were in college. And so we wanted to create this website. So we worked on coding, and really a lot of what I was doing was he is by far the best programmer that I've ever met. He's been programming since he was in seventh grade. And so he's fantastic, super smart guy, Aiden Wallace. And so he worked with me, and I was doing a lot of the design stuff. Really was I know this. He's I don't know what looks good, but Clark, I think you have that eye. I'm like, okay. So I'm working on the design elements, the more the CSS stuff, the way that the user interacts, the design, the colors. And then that never came off the ground, but it was a fun little project to work on. But that fighting game was one of the big projects that I can even remember. And I think I still have my computer from college that has all my programming on it. So I could even pull it up, and it should still work. Yeah. Theoretically, I haven't really looked at it yet.
That's pretty cool. Now let's give a shout out to Phil Woodall. Okay. Because I think he was somewhat instrumental in this shift. Mm-hmm. And so Phil Woodall was on your episode 3, and then you just had him and JP on again. Great episode. And he was just here before you showed up. And I think I've given him props before on fixing my lighting. He's principally the one that's like, all right, you got to buy this and buy that. So I bought that to tackle this thing called lighting that I have never dealt with. Mm-hmm. He and I were actually talking a little bit about, I was like, hey, Clark's coming over. He's like, oh, yeah, that's cool. He's actually talked about where he and I had a conversation, you and him, and when you were struggling with computer science, and he said some stuff about marketing, and then you made the switch. Yeah. And so my point to him was, and part of the reason that I love to hear people's stories and is when you look back on your life. I'm almost 47, and I maybe have like 4 key moments where someone came back into my life that I haven't seen since. It's been 20 something years. It gave me some advice or gave me something to think about that ends up paying huge dividends in decisions I made.
Yeah.
And it sounds to me like Phil and his company is called the Library of, and JP, formerly of Orange Beard Films, now works for the Library of. So I wanted to give a shout out to him. But can you talk just a little bit about that encounter and and what that meant to you?
Yeah, so I think I've had a lot of those encounters, and now that you mention it, it's like one of those things that you don't think about it in the moment, but it's definitely something that's kind of helped push you in that direction. And I think for me, it was when I started doing the podcast and meeting people and kind of figuring it all out. I definitely had some, like, Phil was a huge part. I mean, we've in the early years of the podcast, we met many times, talking about different elements of the podcast, how to market it, how to kind of do it. And then like, as I started going full time, like, okay, what does that look like? How do I need to balance this? How do you balance this? And then even other people that I even haven't had on the podcast, Lauren of Bold Agency. Yep. I mean, she's a good friend. And so she, I've sat down and had coffee with her a couple times and talked about, how does she do this or how does she approach this? And for me, it's one of those things, it's the whole reason I started the podcast too. It's like, people have experienced what I either envision or want to do or want to achieve. Some people have already achieved it in some capacity or some way. Even if it's in a completely different business entity than what I want to do. I don't do film work that Phil does. I don't own a restaurant or a boutique, but there's some way they've approached business, some way they've approached being an entrepreneur, being their own boss that, I could probably apply in some facet to my own way of doing it to make it work. And if it's worked for them, I mean, there's a book called Steal Like an Artist. And it's the whole idea that, like, there's really no unique idea necessarily. It's just new ways to invent the wheel. Yeah. And the wheel's there. It's just new ways to use it, new ways to make it work for what you need.
It's interesting you say that. I was going to make a comment when most developers now, or like software engineers, for the most part, you're just stealing code. Like, no one really has to create their own custom code anymore. It's just knowing, oh, I need to do this thing. Let me go grab this code from wherever you get it, jam it in, and you're just kind of putting this puzzle together.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting to me is I don't know if this remote work lifestyle of most programmers now, if I was doing computer programming, I might have stayed. Just because I could have done kind of like the general day-to-day could have been similar to what my day-to-day is now. But I don't know. I think I like now when I like even have to do any sort of programming, it's just like, oh man, I don't want to have to fix this. But then he's like, I know how to fix it. And it's like, it's such a dread. And I still lean on friends like Aiden to help on some stuff. Like, hey, this isn't working. Can I send you this code? He's like, sure. And he'll like look at it real quick and like, oh, you forgot this one little comma, this one little print, whatever it might be. Yeah. Oh, thanks. Copy right back in and good to go. But it's like, I knew that like that wasn't something that I wanted to do forever. And I think, like I always say to people, it's like the things you do in your life that you do the most of is work and sleep. So you might as well have a job you really, really enjoy doing and a really nice bed to sleep on. Because those are the two things you're going to do a lot of your life. And for me, it's like I could enjoy it for a little while, but I feel like I was going to get too comfortable with being in computer science, the lifestyle, maybe the income, whatever that might look like, that I would have just been sufficient in staying there. And I think that's what a lot of Huntsville is, and a lot of what there's people that really love their job and really love what they like to do. Don't get me wrong, but I think there's a lot of people that did it because it was what everyone else was doing and they knew it would pay well. And now they're kind of stuck because they have, a nice house. They might have a lake house. They might have a boat. They might have another boat, So it's like, I didn't want to get into that hole of being like, well, now if I do this, it's a really big, and like, that's what, Phil and JP, they jumped ship from being in the government world and now being creatives. And so I was like, what if I just start by being a creative? What if I just start by doing this? And if anything, if it fails and 5 years from now or whatever, I've learned a lot and I can bring the value to doing something else, another company, another idea, or I could go get a job. The job at the corporate world is always going to be there. Sure. It is always going to be there. The amount of jobs that I've seen for marketing pop up over the course of doing this full time, are huge. And so like the job's always going to be there. This Beyond Rockets, this company is not always going to be there. So I need to double down and make it the best I can right now.
Yeah. So you might be one of the first. We always hear about founders of companies that started it in their dorm room. And, in my limited knowledge, it's usually some high-tech company. You might be one of the first it's kind of refreshing where it's a marketing company.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think there's a lot of podcasts out there, of course, but you had a bigger dream, you have a bigger goal, and you've realized that now, right? As you've kind of incorporated your Beyond Rockets. So let's transition and talk about that.
Okay.
Who was your first, if you don't mind talking about kind of the first customer that you brought on to Beyond Rockets, and was it difficult for you to kind of convince them? Were they just kind of like, hey, I'm not just a podcast guy.
Yeah.
I'm here to offer full service marketing.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, my very first client doing marketing work for was Kyle over at Offbeat, Offbeat Coffee Studio, Kyle Husband. I had them on the podcast. They were maybe my second guest, maybe second or fourth guest, something like that. And so I had them on the podcast. They become really good friends. I would go there a lot during college to study and do work. He's a great friend today. I saw him today. And so I just kind of approached him and I was like, hey, I think I could help you with marketing and social media stuff, help you kind of navigate it, schedule content, create content, and then take that load off of you, because I know you're doing it in person. I know you're doing it yourself right now, and you've started this business to do a coffee shop. You didn't start to be a marketing company. You didn't start to do on social media, but you know the power of what social media can do.
Well, let's pause there. Where did you get that confidence that you could come out and talk to these people, these business owners? You're 22 years old, you're starting a company. What kind of gave you that swagger to be able, like, I got this?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess when I first started the podcast, I started the podcast in May of 2019. So I would have been 20 at the time. And then I started doing marketing work with Offbeat probably right after my 21st. So I would have been like March of 2020, I guess. And I formed the company in October of 2020. And so in that March time, I guess I'd already starting the podcast, I was a nobody. Like, no one knew of this podcast. No one knew who I was. And so a lot of me getting past that is like, I don't mind being uncomfortable. I don't mind. I've just never have minded, just asking.
Yeah.
Like, what's the worst thing they could say? No. That's, at least they responded. Like, I have people that don't respond. Like, at least they responded and told me no. And so it was like never a hard thing for me. And then with the podcast already starting, I had already reached out to people I had never met. I've cold messaged this person. Hey, I have this podcast. Love to have you on. Sure, love to be on. Hey, not right now. Never responded. And so that so-called fear of rejection was never really a thing. I didn't really mind. And then kind of circling around to March of 2020, it was just kind of like, hey, the podcast is growing well. I'm trying things myself. We're getting listeners. I think I could use the same model, the same sort of knowledge that I've been learning by just trial and error and apply it to a business that I really enjoy. Like, I really loved Offbeat. They had just opened. Maybe we're getting close to celebrating their 1 year, I guess. Time frame kind of throws me off a little bit. But so it was kind of like, hey, like, there's an opportunity. I know this person. I was like, you don't even have to pay me. Like if anything, you can give me a gift card to get coffee. Like, I'm already here. Like, but let me just try
help me
it.
get started.
Yeah, just help me get started. Give me a try. And it was pretty easy on there. Like, I was shocked about it because it was just like, sure, yeah. I think that's a great idea. And I was like, okay, well, like, I'm going to create like a Google Drive that we can share images together, and then I'll create a posting schedule that I put stuff on, and then I'll ping you when that's available for you to check it out to make sure it is approved. Or I can just text you whatever way works best for you, and then I can come by and do this, and this. And then at the time, it was good because like they had someone that did photos for them, and so I kind of didn't have to learn that skill.
Yeah,
I had to learn the skill of, hey, let's post the content. Let's do that. And when I first started, I mean, I just gave the login information and I would just switch to Offbeat and post. I didn't have like a posting software to do it for me. I only had one client. And then from there, I mean, I give Kyle the credit to really starting it. I mean, he really gave me that first push. And then from there, they really enjoyed the working with me. And they then recommended me to Philip Robinson over at Bender's Gym. And I've done theirs since. I'm doing they're one of my oldest clients. I do stuff with them, and so I started doing their marketing. And then from there, they've recommended me to a couple other clients. I did Red Door Homes for a little while. I did a couple other people that they just knew because they came into the coffee shop, and they would get to chit-chatting about what they're doing in their businesses, and like, oh, we really need someone to help with marketing at this point, and someone to, oh, we have, who do y'all use? Oh, we use Clark. Oh well, yeah, that's good. And I got Fat Sammy's that same way. And so it was one of those things, they gave me that push, and then from there, I was able to just kind of figure it out. And so from really probably March or April of 2020 till October, I just started slowly adding clients. And I would say probably by the time it kind of got to the point in like August of 2020 where I was like, this business, this thing of marketing has become much more than I thought already. Like I already have, a decent amount as a college student coming in. I should probably make this a real legal thing and like create the entity and like make this a thing.
Right.
Now, how do I do that? Okay. Luckily, Kaki's aunt works at a law firm in town. So I was like, hey, could y'all help me with the LLC? Sure. So I came by and they like formed the LLC for me and made all that paperwork. Cause I was like, I don't want to do it wrong. And so they kind of helped me guide on that. And so in October of 2020, I formed the LLC. So I just celebrated 2 years of the formation of the company.
Yeah.
And so since then, I've just been continuing to help different clients. Some clients I still have that I first started helping with, clients come and go some. So it's just a matter of figuring out. And then over the years, I've really tried to figure out what it is that I enjoy doing and what it is I like is my offering.
Yeah. So help me understand this. Well, actually, I'm going to ask you like an interview question. When I used to interview people quite regularly, a lot of them were like developers, data science, specialists. And I would ask, and if let's say they were in a very kind of technical role where certifications are kind of required, they have to re-up their certification or go after a new certification type thing to make their resume look attractive. And I would always ask certain people like, what is it you do when you're not at work to improve your craft? So I'm assuming you're kind of getting started and people have given you a chance, right? Taking a chance, you're starting to build some customers, but give me an idea of kind of, you're still in the laboratory, if you will, and on the weekends and at night, like, okay, how do I get better, right? And what do I need to do to continue to provide value, right, to these customers that are trusting me?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess being social media marketing or organic content is really what I do. Like that's what I really try to center on. And so I've tried to do a lot of different things and really I don't enjoy them enough to really do the social media organic stuff. So for that, it was really just trying to be a consumer myself. Because a lot of it, like I said, it's been done in some capacity in some way. And so Huntsville's growing at this point. Other cities are growing. Birmingham, Nashville, Chattanooga already have a really good, strong, local businesses on social media. And so trying to see what those cities are doing and see how they're approaching it. And so then I kind of look at that because it's me. I think what's kind of been, it's me not only trying just to like, hey, I think I could do this really well for you, but it's also like, hey, I want to make sure I can help you further what you've already created and make it better and make it more consistent and make it happen more often, but not trying to create this whole new brand for you. You have a brand. It's just me trying to make it be seen. And so a lot of it was me being a consumer in the sense of just seeing what social media was looking like, seeing where things were going, what people were doing, what trends people were trying. Are they trying to do this? Are they trying to do that? I love podcasts. So a lot of it, I don't listen to as much as I used to. I listen to more audiobooks now, but in a couple of my jobs, when I was a custodian, I would listen to podcasts I was night shift. And so I would just put on my headphones and listen to podcasts from 4 to 8, 4 to 9, whenever I worked. And so that was one of those things that like I would listen to How I Built This a lot. And I would listen to like different marketing podcasts, Tim Ferriss show. I would listen to all these different podcasts and these experts in the field. And not necessarily that they weren't necessarily talking just about social media marketing, but they were talking about the idea and the practice of marketing itself. Yeah. And then figuring out how can I use social media as that tool for these businesses to achieve what they want to achieve. And these practices and these principles, I think, are universal in some sense. And so being able to figure out different ways to apply that was really kind of where the initial spark. And then now it's kind of transitioned to books. I don't read physical books too often. I listen to audible books more. Some on my Kindle I'll read as well, but that's really the transition of kind of now I can kind of these practices, these principles, and then trying to transition to now being more of a, hey, I still got things to figure out within the business offerings, but I need to learn how to be a business owner too. These are two different skills. Like I'm a service provider. That's why I started the company. Now I happen to be a business owner. Well, I need to figure out how to be a business owner. Like the service stuff is going to continue to develop, continue to be something I really enjoy. But as the business is hopefully going to grow, like I got to be the owner. I got to be the boss. It's something like I got to figure out what it looks like to be that boss. Yeah.
Some of that's, I guess, wrestling with how do you scale? Do you want to scale? You know, in your business, you're all about helping them to market, but are you marketing yourself? Right.
That's a big one.
You know, and I think that's the number one thing I've heard from people friends of mine that have been self-employed. and let's say they were like leadership development consultants, right? And they get hired by a company, and they might come in and they're going to interview 20 people who are going to go through some sort of cohort multi-week program to make them better managers, and they interview them all. Then they have to come back and figure out how to create this custom curriculum. Then they have to deliver it. And then, 10 weeks go by, and then they realize, oh no, I haven't been doing enough to market myself for the next gig, right? And it's certainly one thing to rely on referrals and people, and I think once you get good, word of mouth.
Yeah.
I think Lauren from Bold Agency talked about that, where it's just kind of, they're in this nice little rhythm where they're just kind of given work and they don't even really have to advertise much.
Yeah. And I think
right?
you get to that point too. And I think the podcast has really played that role for me. I mean, that podcast is how I get to be one-on-one with a business owner. And then in conversation, the one thing I always ask them when I finish the podcast is, now I've spent 37 minutes asking you about what you do. Now you get the opportunity to ask me about what I do.
Right.
And then from there, you're able to address, hey, I have a marketing company. Oh, I had no idea. Who have you done work with? Well, I've done work with these people. Oh, wow. I know that owner.
Yeah.
And that network of small business owners in Huntsville is such a close knit community that you're bound to have cross with one of the people I've worked and that's one of those things. It's now trying to transition to how do I do market for myself? I'm the last on the list of what needs to be done marketing wise on a daily basis for me. I am always the last person, and it, not necessarily like that should be the case, but I should be also a priority. I mean, there's stuff that I need to do beyond just the podcast, because the podcast is really the only way that I post right now. I need to be able to talk about what I do in the company too.
Yeah. What give me an idea from your perspective what people, when you come across a customer and their mind, and I think you touched on this a little bit, they probably don't think they need to spend money on marketing because they got it under control. Give me an idea of kind of that point of what they think marketing is and the efforts they've been applying. And then you kind of come in and just through conversation, you remove those blinders and help them see, oh my goodness, I didn't realize the full breadth of what marketing really means and how to use our dollars effectively. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and so I that is definitely something. So like I think the way that I approach it is often the businesses that I see that I've helped with a lot is the businesses that have done. Sometimes they've done relatively well on social media. They've been relatively consistent. They're posting pretty often. They're posting good content. But then you do have those expectations of you have someone in house do it. Sometimes what happens is that person's also being is there for another role. Yeah. And so those conversations of, hey, like their value of what you brought them here to help you with this, but they're having to do this, like eventually that's you start to see it where it starts to tend where like they're doing more of what one thing's going to hurt. And so you're going to start to see that. And I think for me, there's a lot that there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes than just actually posting a piece of content. Sure. And I think when I have these conversations with people and you're able to address, hey, what is it that you've liked your social media so far to done? Well, we've done a really good job about doing this. What have you not liked? Well, we don't really do it often. And I always ask people, it's like, do you feel like you're only posting when you think you haven't posted in a while? Well, yeah. Then you're probably not posting enough. Mm-hmm. If you're really only posting when, it's been 4 days and I probably should let people know about this special we've had for the last 2 days, you probably need to, maybe it's because that position is either on you and you're the business owner. You shouldn't be having to deal with the marketing. You should have a hand in it. You should be knowing what's going on. You should be aware, but the actual execution of it should not be on your hands. You started it to be a coffee shop owner. You started it to be a restaurant owner, whatever that might be. And so when they see the value of that, it's like, hey, I'm not trying to work for you. I'm not being your marketing person. I'm trying to work with you. And that's the way I approach it with anybody. It's me. The social media is a tool, and I want to make sure that tool is able to do its very best, because more than likely, I kind of use the trifecta of, your digital presence, in the sense of most people have a Facebook, most people use Instagram, some businesses will use Twitter, and then their website itself. And often, like, you'll see their brand and their vision for what they want their company to look like be really well on their website. Sometimes their website's really up to date, but the other two are lacking, or vice versa. But it's like, if all three aren't working, your social media presence, your platforms you're on aren't all working in tandem together to be as successful as it could be, you're just not, you're missing out on what could be there. And like, it's often like, they always ask the question, how can you because I organic social media marketing is what I do. And that's like, I don't want to run paid ads for you. I don't want to run like, that's just not, I've done it for businesses before. I did it as an intern at Holtz. It's just, I don't enjoy it. And I want to
throw money at anything.
Yeah. And I want to be able to, my thing is like, if you want to run ads, that's great. But if you have no organic presence, the ads are only doing so good.
Yeah.
And if you're just getting these people to follow you, but they're just not really adding any value, you need to grow organically and then supplement that some with some ads too. But if you're not growing organically and doing some organic content, your ads could be doing better for the audience that you actually need. Because if this person in Minnesota is liking your ad, but they have no way of shopping because you only shop in person at your restaurant on Washington, well then that's not doing you any good when you could grow organically and grow a Huntsville, North Alabama audience that could actually come and buy your stuff.
Right. You mentioned it as this is a good segue. I was just about to ask you a question kind of related to, how you refer to your company or talk about the capability, but let's just go to your website, and this is new. And I think if you want to have a chance to kind of brag about what you've created here, but social media marketing agency.
Yep.
Right. And this is new as of
last week.
Last week?
Yeah.
Okay.
I changed templates and the website was gone. And so I had to work quickly to make the website back up. And so hopefully there's no too many typos, but it should all be there and working.
And there you are with Khaki.
Yep.
And I think you had said that one of your dreams is to have her involved, right? With Beyond Rockets.
She helps with stuff a lot behind the scenes. I am not very good at English. English is not my strong suit. Never has been.
Okay.
And so she is very, very good at proofreading and writing stuff. And so she'll help a lot on that end. She'll be like, I have no idea what you're trying to say. And then sometimes she'll be like, I know what you're trying to say, but you're doing a very bad job saying it. And so she's very honest with me and she'll help me a lot with that. And she's good. She's often like, if she's off work, she'll help me on a photo shoot with another camera,
right, just
to get another perspective. And so she already helps in some capacity, but I think moving forward, I mean, having that as a role, I mean, she would love to be a part of it. So
this is a chance to kind of highlight anything you want to highlight on your new webpage or just within your website altogether.
So, the podcast page has changed a little bit. If anyone's seen the old site, what it looked like. So I just embedded the whole player so you can scroll through and see all the different episodes. I started numbering them as of August, and that's something that is easy so you can hopefully find episodes a little bit easier than just having a name. And then there's the links to Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. Guest episodes are on YouTube. And then I have a spot for sponsors. And so currently we have Rob Murphy of Affinity Recruiting and Consulting. A little bit of information about him, any other sponsors that we get. If any businesses listening and they want to be a sponsor, want to find out more information, that's definitely something that we're looking at. So that page has kind of changed a little bit. I think it makes it a little bit simpler to see and read and everything like that. And then the social media assessment is a new tool that we've just added, and it's actually it's a landing page for a assessment you can take. It's the Small Business Social Media Marketing Assessment, and this is 12 questions that kind of assesses where your business is on social media. It gives me insight. So there's two different. I want to be value adding up front, and that's the first thing I want to be able to do as a business. And so this gives you, if anything, even if you don't work with me, this gives you the insight about what your business is doing on social media and on marketing is concerned. And it gives me insight too if you actually do decide to work with me. And so you put your name and your email, and there's 4 different categories. There's the strategy room, the data center, business values, and brand builder. And it just asks you 3 questions about each category. Gives me insight, gives you insight, and it's a good place. And that's where I would direct anybody that is anybody that's looking to do marketing work, wants to find out more information. That's kind of the great first step. Then I can follow up via email with you. We can schedule a call. There's actually a landing page I've created called, it's just beyondrockets.com /marketing. And it's a landing page that just has the podcast and it has this assessment. So you can kind of go there and that's kind of the spot. But that's something I've just recently created and kind of put together. So
you went with a little different look on your shot here with all the hair. Your hair's a lot longer.
Yes, hair's a lot longer. Those photos were taken during our engagement photos. Okay. So my hair is definitely a lot longer than them. I need to get some new headshots if I continue to have long hair because they're a little outdated.
I still use some headshots from like 5 years ago.
They're good photos, and it's like, oh well, it's fine.
Yeah, sometimes you just have a photo. They're just like, I like that photo. Yeah. And I'm gonna go with that, even if I'm like 30 pounds heavier than what it was before. False advertising.
Yeah.
I guess I'm trying to figure out, like, I still struggle. I have an MBA.
Mm-hmm.
I've certainly I work for Mantech, and I've done different things in marketing, but sometimes I still struggle with the concept of full service marketing. And kind of what that means beyond just advertising and promotion. Do you include in there even some PR? Are you going to be doing some PR work?
So, I mean, a lot of the businesses that I work with, I mean, I talk about in stuff anyway. And so I try to include them in, I do this new podcast series that just started in August. It's kind of a weekly episode, and they're the what's happening in Huntsville.
Right.
And so a lot of the businesses that I actually work with, or some of the businesses I work with, I will include in these promotion things on my site just to kind of help give them push about, hey, there's this event that's going on. Hey, Fractal's showing all the soccer games right now going on. So there's always these opportunities, and I try to use those opportunities as much as I can. And anything that I think that comes up, trying to include. And I think that's something that's moving forward is definitely something that I am trying to consider different ways of doing it. I think for me, it's there's a lot of I think what I've seen, at least from my perspective, is when I'm doing the social media organic content and I'm approaching a new client and talking to them about what I do and how do I specialize and this is why you should hire me. A lot of them already have their brand and their website and that together. They're just not doing the day-to-day, and the day-to-day stuff can be very tedious, and that's why it's hard for a business owner that has a restaurant or coffee shop or gym or whatever it might be, you name it, to take the time out of their day to do the marketing on social media, because it can be tedious. It's you get those quick photos of things every once in a while and you're able to share it. You're able to share it to your story, whatever that might look like. But the actual looking at the data, that's why I asked a lot of the questions on the assessment about are you looking at data? Are you actually aware of what things are working and what's not working? Or are you just putting out what you think needs to be put out?
Yeah.
Because I think at the end of the day, that's a big part of what I try to do is assess the data, go through there on a monthly basis, pool the data, present the data to them, kind of have that perspective, because social media is always changing. And it shouldn't be the business owner's role to know what's changing and what's working. They should take that to me and being able to kind of accomplish that for them, because there's so many nuances and there's so many different ways. And I'm still looking at other businesses too, not even in just Huntsville, that are really successful and seeing how they approach their social media, what's working for them. Because like I said, the wheel's been invented. If it's working for them and the algorithm's pushing it, yes, they have a really good following, but their percentage of likes versus follows is greater than our percentage. So we need to make our percentage a little bit higher. Well, let's kind of implement, maybe the way, this still is on brand for this local company here, but let's try a photo like this. Let's try a graphic like this. Or, is there something that we always promote that just doesn't do well? Well, how does the other companies in town promote it? Well, they promote it very similar to the way we were promoting it. Well, then maybe it's just something that doesn't work, but it's also something that we all know unanimously that we need to talk about. It's just the content just doesn't, hit a home run every time. You're hitting a single.
So is it fair to say, man, my little key is stuck. Is it fair to say that if you have a business where you are depending on a customer set every day, right? Transactions, right? Whether you're a food industry, you're selling clothes, whatever it may be, you should be posting every single day, multiple times a day, in order to draw those people in. Hey, we have a special 20% off, or take a picture of the lunch. Hey, we're serving, chicken pot pie or something today. Is that part of it? Just that daily, you have to be doing something every day, multiple times a day, to continue to entice some segment of the population to come in and consume that product or service.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I approach it, most of my clients, as far as their actual in-feed content, we never post. I don't post every day for any of my clients. They'll post, maybe 4 times a week. They'll maybe post 3 times a week. They maybe post 5 times a week. Some clients, they have a window of hey, we can post anywhere between 3 and 6, depending on what's going on that week. Something we need to address early, but a lot of it's too is the business owner themselves know what they want to talk about. They just don't have the time and the energy needed to execute on what needs to be talked about. And so a lot of it for me too is just sitting down with them and saying, hey, here's your calendar. Give me access to your Google Calendar. Yeah. Here's your events that are taking place. Here's when they're taking place. Now, how early do I need to talk about these events? How much in advance? Okay, well, if, for instance, I do Fractal stuff, and they do music every Friday and Saturday. Okay, well, that's something that's reoccurring, so it doesn't really have to be necessarily too far in advance. But if they're doing a big event like their Sourtage they did last summer, that's a huge, big event, that needs to be talked about every weekend leading up to Sourtosh for, 4 weeks, 3 weeks. Maybe that whole month is just geared on Saturday. Hey, this post in 3 weeks, in 2 weeks, next week, today, because that's something that we really, really need people there for.
Yeah.
And then you have other events that are like, hey, they do their paint nights at the end of the month. Well, that the paint night lady said that her best things do the best when we talk about it early in the month for her. So they have an event at the end of December. She sent me the graphics. I'm going to schedule that for to come out the first week of December for her event later in December. So a lot of it's just the timing. A lot of it's like the content's there, the ideas are there, the principles are there. They know what they want to talk about. They just don't know the best way to execute it. And that's where I kind of come in.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there any part of it, although you should probably not even admit this, any part that's like frustrating to you or a kind of a weakness where you might be relying on somebody like your wife, Khaki, or someone else, or just similar to like, and that happens in any job, right?
Yes.
Even with the podcast, there's going to be certain things that you loathe because it's necessary. It's a necessary evil.
Yeah.
But is there any part of kind of what you're doing, not that it's going to drive you away from continuing, but like, oh yeah, I don't like this part of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's, like I said, the writing and the grammar. If I have to write long form stuff, that's definitely like I can envision and I know what I want to say. And then often it's, hey, here's what I thought, Khaki, does this make sense? No. Okay, let's make this make sense. Yeah. But I kind of know where you were trying to go. And then there's other aspects like within the podcast itself, for instance, it's, editing has never been something I've enjoyed doing. It's just something I had to do because I had a podcast. And so in the last 3 months, I've actually outsourced that. So I don't even edit any of my episodes anymore. I only do the video, and I can do the video at my office. I can just sync it up to Final Cut, sync the audio together. Yeah. We're good to go. I wish my setup was as awesome as this setup with the lighting. I'll definitely have to take point. I'll take some notes and definitely go back to the studio and make this happen. But I still do the video, and there's elements like that. And so I have to value, and I have a bookkeeper now. And so there's things that I have to realize and step back as the business is continuing to grow of, where is my time best spent and where can I get somebody to help me on this element of it to make my day a little bit easier, make the day-to-day a little bit more to what I need to be front-facing on. Because like it doesn't, for me, for editing, it's like I have to be the face of the podcast. I have to be the one that's recording the episodes. I have to be the one that's, in doing this, what we're doing right now. But the editing and the behind the scenes doesn't have to be me. It just needs to be executed and done correctly. So like, is this going to work? And it's one of those things that like, it's a little scary going into it because it's something that like, I've created and I kind of know. We've had editors throughout, like JP of Orange Beard Films helped me, now Library of, helped me with editing for when I was doing seasons for the first couple seasons. And then I did it for the next middle section. And then I've only had an editor now. But it's one of those things that just the relief of not having to do it is so, it's like amazing. And my episodes have been so much longer now too. Yeah. That I just don't want to sit there and edit them. And I never really focused. My editing process was always so minimal that it really wasn't necessarily the act of editing. It was just the fact of having to edit. Yeah, that was just more or less the thought of I have to go edit this. Like I have to stop what I'm doing. Go. Like, I don't. Not that that editing process itself was so tedious and long, and I was so meticulous on what I was doing. It was just the act and the thought and the before and after of me thinking about having to edit and actually the post edit experience that it was just the hardest thing to get through. It
probably, I would surmise it might just PTSD or remind you a little bit more of like being a coder. Yeah. Or, in the computer science realm, because you do sometimes have to put the headphones on. Yeah. And you're just sitting there and
trying to find the right spot.
Find the right spot. And it can be fun, but it's just tedious. Yeah. And then, of course, every time you do something like, oh, I could do this, I could do that, and it's almost endless.
Yeah, and I don't like the data side of it. I love looking at the data, but the act of actually collecting the data can be one of those things that just takes me a while to do. It's not that it takes me a long time when I'm sitting down to actually accomplish it. It's just the thought of having to do it is just so like, but I value it so much. And that's one thing that like I'm still trying to be better at. Like the last month or so, last 2 months of just collecting data for clients and being able to deliver it on a timely fashion has been tough. I'm gonna be completely honest. But it's one of those things that like now you're able to start, like I see the value and I see that like maybe, if the business is continuing to grow, maybe I have someone that's able to help me with these 3 things that are like, they could get it done in a day. Like I'm not having to hire somebody full time, but I'm able to hire someone as like a contractor doing these 3 things for me, and I'll pay you X amount a month. Because data entry is one of those things that's super valuable for the client and for myself. that if I was able to get the data and then be able to take the time to really dive into what's going on a little bit more than actually the act of collecting it, the value output would be huge. And then you'd be able to scale that a little bit better that way too.
Let's change topics. Look over at the screen,
Okay.
and I want to talk about Avon, Colorado,
Okay.
because you had mentioned that, man, my keys are stuck, that you go on a yearly annual ski trip,
Yes.
snowboard?
Yeah. We actually go out the 10th of December.
Ski or snowboard?
I ski.
Okay. When did you start skiing?
So I went for the first time. It's my wife's family, Kaki's family goes. That's like a big thing for them, and so they've done it for years. Her grandparents have a condo out there.
Okay.
And so like they've been skiing for Kaki's been skiing since she was like 3.
Okay.
And so like I came in as this newbie, the first one of their grandchildren to get married as Kaki, and so she's the oldest, and so like I'm this newbie coming into this realm trying to learn to like keep up really.
Yeah.
And so when first time I ever skied was with them. 2019 we go out there, maybe 2017. New Year's, we spend New Year's out there. We always do. We had a huge group. There was we were in 3 or 4 different condos. There was tons of us. Very overwhelming for someone
You're new to it.
Yes. And so we get out there, and this is a funny story.
These are massive mountains too.
Yes, we get out there, and I get ski lessons because I've never skied before. So we're doing ski lessons. First day we get there skiing. Kind of had a cold before. We get to Colorado, high elevation, not great combination. You'll kind of see where this is going, but we get ski lessons, get done with skiing, and I am just having the hardest time just to like breathe and be alive. At the time I had been training for a marathon, so I was in a really, really good shape. Like I was not like, I've been sitting on the couch programming. Like I have really been exercising, running a lot.
Sea level shape.
Yeah, very good sea level shape. Got a little cold. My sister-in-law had like bronchitis or pneumonia or something right before we went, and she was getting over it, but she had given it to me a little bit of the cold. Get to elevation. Heart does not like that. Ended up going to the hospital, taking an ambulance from the ski mountain in Beaver Creek down to Vail Hospital. In the hospital with heart issues at 20, and maybe 19 actually. I don't even know how old. I think it was 19. And ended up having pericarditis. So I had inflammation around my heart.
Jeez.
And so from then on till basically probably my 20th birthday in February, I was taking so much Advil just because I was like still having a little bit of complications. And then I went out again last year for the first time since then, and skied no problem, fantastic time, skied every single day, didn't do lessons, just kind of jumped out there and kind of taught myself. I've always been a pretty good athlete, so that was just kind of like it's muscle memory. It's just kind of figuring it out. And then this year we're going out again. I think I might have one lesson just to get, because my mother-in-law is still convinced that I'm trying too hard to ski. It should be a lot easier. And so like one lesson, she's like, they'll get you, like, you'll be good to go. I'm like, okay. But now it's become like, it's one of my favorite trips. I love going out there in the mountains. I was actually out there this past summer. My sister-in-law needed someone to drive back with. So I flew out there and drove cross country with her. Yeah. And I've done that the last couple summers and from Montana, went from Bozeman with her Kaki's cousin, and then now Colorado. But yeah, it's a great time.
I could tell you were a newbie because normally you're at Beaver Creek, right?
Yeah.
But you said you're like, oh yeah, I go to Avon, Colorado.
Yeah.
But I think if you had been more of like skiing all the time, I would like, where's Avon? Oh, it's Beaver Creek, of course,
yes.
I love Beaver Creek.
Yeah, and so like there are condos in Avon, and we can go straight to the Beaver Creek to ski, and we go over to Arrowhead and Bachelor's Gulch and stuff like that, and so that's become a very popular place. We love the trip.
Yeah, and what's awesome, I've talked about this in a couple episodes. I had Matt Kroschel on he's like a reporter for Way 31. Okay. And he's from Colorado. We brought this up, but the thing I love about Colorado is, I mean, when you exit, you're right there, off the interstate. In fact, I've stayed on the Vail side over at this Marriott property, which is this Streamside.
Okay.
I mean, that literally, you exit like right into the parking lot of the hotel.
Yeah.
I mean, how easy does that get? Versus sometimes you go places where you have to go up in a canyon for a while. Yeah. That can get dicey if it's snowing.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite trips. It's one of those things that like now that we do it and we get to like, it's something that like yearly is a big part of us. And so like I said, last year I think we went out after New Year's in January. This year we're going out before Christmas, and so we've been in all stages of that key pivotal time and for skiing, and it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it.
Do you go to any other resorts other than Beaver Creek?
So we sometimes will take a day and go down into Vail and actually ski those mountains at Vail,
Okay.
and then we'll go ski over at Bachelor's Gulch and Arrowhead, which they're all kind of connected. I mean, you have Beaver Creek, and then you can go over to Bachelor's Gulch and then over to Arrowhead. Often I skied last year, it was Bachelor's Gulch most of the time, just because we could take the gondola straight up to Bachelor's Gulch, and we could ski that mountain. We only went over to Beaver Creek a few times, but yeah, it's definitely one of it's just a fun thing. It's like being on the mountain, even though like it's so cold and you expect just to like I love the cold, but there's it's a whole nother level of cold there.
Sure.
And it's a fun trip. I'm like looking forward to now. Just like planning for that trip and getting everything in place so that when I go on the trip, I don't have to work too much if I don't have to.
All right, I got one thing to add to your itinerary, and I mention this every time I have a guest on we talk about Colorado or skiing. I'm going to give you this homework assignment if you're not familiar.
Okay.
So when you're coming out I-70 from Denver, you're going to pass an exit for Idaho Springs.
Yes.
Bojo's Pizza.
Okay.
Have you been there?
I have not. I've been to what's that? There's a brewery. Isn't Idaho Springs a brewery?
Yeah, there's probably a brewery
it's
there.
It's what is it called? Tommy Knockers is right there, and it's really good.
Dude, you've got to go to Bojo's.
And
they have several locations in Colorado.
Okay.
I think it started maybe in the Idaho Springs, and it is phenomenal.
Okay.
Great atmosphere. You love kind of like an old warehouse.
Perfect.
But every time I've been like, oh, so you've been to Bojo's Pizza? People are like, no, I never heard of it. Oh man, really?
Yeah. It's I'll definitely give it a try because I think like we're gonna be out there skiing with my khaki side of the family, and then we're going out with my side of the family out there in the summer to like hike and go out there, and it's a whole different like the first time I went out there was this past summer when I drove back, and it's a whole different atmosphere being out there in the summer. It was amazing.
That's awesome. Oh yeah, especially with I don't know if they have an alpine slide there, but there's just the hiking and there's these lakes you don't know when you're there in the winter because they're all snowed over.
I honestly, I didn't realize there was as many lakes as there was.
Yeah.
Because you're just like, oh, I had no idea this was here. Like we went over, I think we did the off-roading trails, and you go to Piney Lake over there. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's a cool experience. It's cool to be on both ends of it.
You know what? This is probably a good time to do the quick six. I don't know if you've ever, my quick six questions.
Okay.
Although I'm going to give you 7 today.
Oh, I'm ready.
And they don't have to be quick answers.
Okay.
All right. Sometimes I construct them to be quick, and sometimes I construct them to just be like, thought-provoking.
Okay.
Okay, you ready? These are like the few things I actually write down.
Perfect.
And then the question is, am I going to be able to read my own handwriting? And I'm looking around for reading glasses. I don't think I have any. I'm telling you, there's something that happens to people when you turn like 45. Like, you just start losing your eyesight.
I already have
It's
really
true.
bad eyesight,
Oh,
so
really?
I'm not looking forward to it.
All right, here we go. Here's the quick 6. First question. Band, you're into concerts. You said you already have 2 concerts you're ready for in May.
Mm-hmm.
We have the Orion Amphitheater.
Yep.
If you had your pick to bring any band, your favorite band, to the Orion to see, bring all your buddies from Huntsville to see this band, who's it going to be?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would honestly, the first thing that comes to mind is going back to my very first concert. If I was able to see that at the amphitheater, which was Aerosmith and ZZ Top.
Oh, wow.
That was my first concert, and so that would be cool. Just to be like, I could see them. I mean, I was probably 8 or 9 when I saw them,
Really?
and so seeing them again now at 23 would be really cool.
You know, let me refer you. I don't know if you listen to Rogan's podcast, but Rick Rubin was just on, who's a music producer, and he's produced like all kinds of different genres. He was huge with the Beastie Boys. He does some stuff with like the Chili Peppers, punk bands, heavy, hard rock. But he talked about the Aerosmith Run DMC thing, and he was the one that basically got Run DMC to do the cover for Walk This Way.
Oh wow!
And it was really interesting. Like, I was a kid when that came out, and it was like going to be somewhat controversial for a few days. And then all of a sudden it was like just number 1.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that it was not only good for Run DMC, but Aerosmith was like fledgling as a band.
Wow.
They needed like something good to happen. And that saved them and helped them to get out of bad times and get back on a good trajectory.
Huh.
It's really interesting.
That is cool.
Rick Rubin. Okay. Ready for question 2?
Ready.
All right. Hold on here. All right. When you go running,
Okay.
what's on your playlist?
Ooh. So I'm either listening to nothing,
Really?
Or my wife says I'm insane. Either I listen to nothing at all and I'm just like looking around and running, or I'll listen to a book. And the book that I'm listening to right now is the 5 a.m. Club.
Okay.
And so I've listened to this year David Goggins' book, which is fantastic. It's actually read by him, so I'd highly recommend the Audible book of that.
Love that guy.
And then I've done 4,000 Weeks or something like that. It's like another like self-help book. I listen to mostly marketing or biographies. Those are like my go-to. And so that's the current on the list. If I listen to any music, I love country music and I listen to that mostly. Like Zach Bryan is one of my favorites. Co Wetzel, who's actually coming to town, one of my concerts in May at the amphitheater. But running, it's very hard to listen to that because it's just not upbeat enough. I want to be like, for me, listening to that music is like outside on the porch when it's cold by a fire. Like that, like is like a great fit. Or in the office, I'll listen to it. And so like I have to kind of change it up a little bit. But if I listen to any music to run, oh man, that's a good question. Music. The Harry Styles As It Was a good album. That's a good album. His new album was good. But I don't listen to music very much.
I like to, if I can ever come across a song where like just the beat will match like one of my feet hitting the pavement, and you just kind of like, I'm just going to run to this beat.
Yeah.
You know?
For me, like running is the time to like not think about anything. And when I can listen to a podcast or listen to a book and like completely forget that I'm actually running is the absolute best. Like I was listening to David Goggins when I was running trails a lot. And that was a wild experience because like I would get really into the book and then realize like I was running. I was running up from Montesano because we live right off a toll gate, and so I was running through the trails, and I already kind of had a map and in my head like I think I can get to here and like here's this point, you know, like we talked about a little bit before with running. It's like I kind of got to I knew roughly where I needed to go, and I'm just into the book and I'm just running, feeling great, not really worried about time or pace or anything because we're on the mountain, and then I ended up popping out and I like Kaki was getting off work, so I was calling her. I was like, oh yeah, like we had dinner with her parents that night. It's like, okay, yeah, like I'm almost at this turn. I'm gonna go right down the mountain. I'll be at 3 caves and I'll be home in 15 minutes. Okay, sounds good. And I like step another step and I step out and I'm on Montesano Mountain. Like I'm on like going up Montesano Mountain right past Burritt, and I'm like, I am not where I thought I was. And I like sat there for a second and like I pulled up the map and I was like, that's the turn and here's where I'm at. Okay. What's the quickest way home? And I was like, well, like if I go back, I'm probably not going to get it. I was like, okay, let me just keep going. So I'm running down Montesano Boulevard past Burritt on the side of the road. There's no sidewalks all the way down, get out to Governor's, and it's like 5 o'clock traffic at this point. And I'm like, okay. And there's like a little bit of like a side wall right past Burritt going to like the next neighborhood. And so I'm running on the side of Governor's, 5 o'clock traffic, not a good scenario.
People honking at you?
Yeah, jump into the neighborhood, and I start running a little bit, and I'm like, I'm not going to get home in time. And I was like, I called Kaki. I was like, I'm going to run to here. Can you come pick me up, and we'll go straight to your parents? Okay. Yeah. So I'm like running, and I'm like, that's a moment where I was like, maybe the music would have been a better idea because I would have been less like entrenched in what was like. I was so into the book that I just forgot that I was actually like close to like not in the right space. And so that's only happened a couple times, but I enjoy listening to books though.
Goggins is the man.
Yeah, it was such a good book.
All right. If you had to apologize to someone that you've never been able to apologize to for something you did at any stage in life, you think about a circumstance and maybe who that person is?
That's a good question.
Doesn't have to necessarily be completely egregious, but missed opportunity. You got the wheels turning.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to think through like what would be a.
I have too many on my list. Yeah. It would be hard to narrow it down.
I don't know. I mean, I think there's been times within the business early on that like I maybe expected that I was farther along than maybe I actually was in the business, maybe approaching like potential clients or potential sponsors for the podcast at a level that really wasn't corresponding to really where I was, but I just hadn't realized within my own being where I actually was in the business, and realizing that maybe that just wasn't the right fit at that time, and maybe I came on too much when really that's not like that. Obviously, like I'm not there yet, and so I think like a lot of those is just like being realistic to where I'm actually at. That's one of the first things that come to mind. I feel like there's probably a better one that I'm just not thinking of. Someone might be listening and be like, oh, he needs to apologize to me for something he did. But I can't think of anything at the moment.
Let me help you out. I'm going to give you a lifeline. Let me ask a different type of question.
Okay.
Similar but different. anybody you want to thank that you never had a chance to thank, a teacher, you know, probably teachers, I think sometimes might fall in this category. You don't realize until later what impact they had on you, but at that point, you know, they've moved on or whatever.
I think a lot, like when we talked about JP and Phil and Kyle, I mean, those three were definitely key in the business. Like I don't like, I've talked to him about it a couple times, but I think actually thanking them, JP, Phil Woodall, and then Kyle Husband of Offbeat, I think those three they played huge roles in me doing this today. Like I would not be doing this at all if Kyle didn't give me the chance. If my first guest was JP and he didn't say yes to be on the podcast, then I wouldn't have had a podcast. If he wouldn't have been gave the opportunity for him to edit my episodes and him having the great gear, like I probably wouldn't be still doing it today.
Yeah.
If Phil wouldn't have been able to guide me along the way of like, hey, how did you do this, or how did you approach this business, or stuff like that, I think a lot of those are very much like, I would definitely 100% not be doing it if it wasn't for those three guys.
Cool. I like it. All right. All right. So a zoo is coming to North Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have to listen if you haven't. You're probably already aware of that. But Ethan Woodruff, I interviewed him. I still can remember all my episode numbers. Episode 27, and the question I have for you, because there's other zoos right in Alabama, and zoos are awesome. Yeah, one of my favorites is the Philadelphia Zoo, but I've been to San Diego Zoo, and I think he mentioned the Columbus Zoo in Ohio was amazing. But when you go to a zoo, what's the number one attraction? Like you must see this exhibit.
I love monkeys.
The monkeys.
And I think some zoos, depending on I'm thinking through zoos that I've been to recently. And I mix a lot with like aquariums too. And so it wasn't part of the question, but I love penguins. And so, but I think as far as the zoo, like the monkeys are a must. The monkeys, the apes, I think those are amazing. Sometimes they'll have lemurs, and I think that's super cool. Like penguins in Madagascar, that just gets. I think that's just awesome. And so I think those three are just like a must that I'm always into. And like I think zoos are one of those things too that just like when you go to a city, it's one of those things that's like, hey, maybe we could go to the zoo nearby. And like so we've done that a couple times. But I think those three, the monkeys, apes, and like lemurs, are hard to beat.
That's cool. Yeah, I actually had somebody commented. I think I did a post on like a clip from that episode, and someone wrote in and said, every time I go to a city, the very first thing I do from like an entertainment standpoint is go to a zoo.
Wow.
It's like, I can't say that. I mean, I will do that eventually.
Yeah, but it's not normally the first thing that I think of.
But the cool thing about the zoo coming is now when you have guests from out of town and you start thinking about like, okay, we can do the botanical gardens, we can do the Space and Rocket Center, we can do downtown, but the zoo will be just a great like option.
Yeah, and it's like especially at certain stages of life, like if they have kids, it's like, oh, your kids love the zoo.
Yep. Okay. All right. If I was to put you on a plane, and you get to go to New York City, and there's going to be some sort of area in Times Square where the Beyond Rockets podcast gets to interview someone of your choice. So think about the venue, right? You're New York City.
Okay.
You know, you're in Times Square. Who are you interviewing?
Casey Neistat, YouTuber.
Okay.
He just recently actually moved back to New York. I think he has a Broadway. I can picture. He's a YouTuber that is a big vlogger at one point.
Okay.
And so like when I was in high school, early college, he was vlogging, and he was like one of the, like he was all the time, every day. He talks a lot about, he's done a lot of podcasts that I've listened to about his time doing it, how it basically almost destroyed his marriage and all this stuff. But he's such an entertaining guy. His way of telling a story is fantastic. He's a huge runner. He runs every day, 10 miles potentially every day.
Wow.
Like he's a huge runner, just ran the New York City Marathon. And I would love to interview him. He has a office and like a studio on Broadway. I think it's a company called 368, and it's 368 Broadway is where his studio is right across the street or right above it. So that's who I would interview, and I would interview it at his studio. Yeah, because I would want to see his studio, and if you've never seen it, it's amazing. It's like from pictures wise, he's so meticulous on how he organizes and sets up his studio for the optimal that's one thing I always like get into, like the optimal way of you creating content or you creating work. Like, how can I make sure everything's in place where it needs to be when I need it there?
Yeah.
So I know. So if I need to do something, I know exactly where it is.
Yeah.
And his office and his studio is, I mean, floor to ceiling, labeled, everything sectioned off. All this, like, it's such a cool experience, and I would love to do it there.
That's cool. Have you actually messaged him? You should message him.
I have not messaged him. I love that sort of just like that cold messaging of like, maybe you'd be on my podcast.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that are somewhat connected to Huntsville that I'm always like, I would love to have this person on. I do have some dream guests.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of those things. It's a like worst they could say is the worst they could do is not respond, and the worst they could say is no.
Yeah.
And so I think like, why not?
Yeah. I actually I've been kind of looking for like a national level guest just to see if like would they respond.
Yeah.
You know, I'm assuming you'd have to fly them here and you know, whatever, but you know, I sent a message, no response, of course. You know, because they're gonna look at my viewers like, yeah, right.
Nah, I'm okay.
Yeah, not that guy. All right, so you said you're a big Auburn fan.
Mm-hmm.
You like watching the NFL. No particular team.
No, I'm big fantasy football.
You like the Braves.
I do.
And basketball, but baseball. I'm kind of as I get older, I kind of get into the sports more in the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't watch the baseball MLB anytime but the playoffs. Really, same thing with basketball. Like occasionally if it's on, I'll watch it, but really it's the playoffs is my go-to.
Okay, so here's the question: you get one of three options.
Okay,
Auburn. Of course, you know they're gonna have to rebuild. Hopefully, they'll get their coaching situation sorted out. I either give you tickets to the national championship game, and they're playing in it.
Okay.
And let's just also be considerate to the location here. And let's say that's in Miami.
Okay.
Okay. The Braves World Series Game 7.
Okay.
In Atlanta.
Perfect.
Or Super Bowl tickets, and it's gonna be played in New Orleans. What are you choosing?
Man, oh man.
So it's either, I guess that'd be the Orange Bowl. Auburn's playing the national championship. The Orange Bowl has been deemed the BCS national championship side or whatever. Braves, you know, it's all deadlocked. They're gonna go. I don't know what team do you hate the most?
I don't like the Dodgers, but
the American League.
I always
had to pick someone from the American League, but whatever. They're most heated rivals. So it's Game 7 or Super Bowl.
Man, I think that's. My gut wants to go with the Auburn just because, like, Alabama, like, state, like, great. But one of my, like, what I really want to go to is something bigger, like the World Series. And I feel like I would lean to the World Series in a Game 7. I know just the atmosphere of a Game 7 is hard to beat.
Yeah.
Seeing when the Braves won this 2 years ago, I guess, not last year, just like that atmosphere, what it looked like, I think would be amazing. So you'd probably go the World Series, then Auburn, then the NFL. Like I love watching. I mean, Sundays watching NFL on Mondays, watching NFL on Thursday. Like, I love fantasy football. I love okay, I have my running backs playing, so I'm cheering for like individual players. I could care less if the whole team wins, but like I just want this player to really get a lot of catches, you know, don't throw any interceptions. And so I think I would enjoy any of them, but I feel like the atmosphere of the World Series would be just hard to beat.
Yeah. So I had this discussion when I interviewed Josh Carey, just as far as like my question to him was, what sport is it most difficult to reach the title game or the Super Bowl or whatever? But I struggle with like anything where there's a bracket, and to declare someone a champion. So NCAA, like, okay, but you didn't get to play like all the schools. You only got to play 5, you know. Or unfortunately, even for like a football game, there's a game, okay, but there could have been some injuries or whatever. So I think baseball is very compelling. So if it does come down to a Game 7, you've at least seen the starter once, and that starter probably will get to come back in Game 7 and pitch. Where it's almost more of like, well, that's the whole purpose of baseball. You had 6 other games. Now we're going to a Game 7 where you're truly in that 7-game series testing the ball club.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? And removing the outlier.
Yes.
Or of just a game, and maybe it's the weather, maybe it's someone has a cold, you know, and I think it's more of a level playing field. You really determine like that's the better team.
Yes.
They won 4 out of 7. You know what I mean?
I agree. I mean, I think like with the NFL being like just a one game sort of thing, it's tough to be like, is that the best they could have been, or if they would have had a best of 4, or best of 7, like what would have the outcome actually been?
Yeah.
And I think that's what the compelling side of me watching the playoffs, even though there's so many games in the MLB playoffs that it's like, even if you don't watch, like you still watch so many games in the playoffs, but you don't have to watch 182 other games to get through there. Yeah. And that just is like, that's exhausting. And I feel like the experience of going to a game 7 when it's been like that back and forth for so long, and like, this is going to be whoever wins the World Series. And like, this is when it's going to happen. Like you could be at game 4 and like they could theoretically win.
Yeah.
But it's like at game 7, they've both gone neck and neck the whole time. And I feel like the atmosphere would just be hard to beat.
I was just thinking like a really good punishment for someone is make them play fantasy baseball. Like the whole regular season.
Yeah.
I would be torture.
Yeah, I'd be so confused if they're playing or not today, because it's like they could play on any day of the week. It's not like it has to be a Sunday, it has to be a Thursday, and it has to be a Monday. I couldn't do it. It'd be so
changes.
Exhausting.
Yeah, man. Clark, it's been a pleasure, man.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it.
I don't know if you wanted to ask me any questions, but or what do you have upcoming for the podcast? Let's talk about that real quick, and some of the guests that you have scheduled or what you're excited about.
Yeah, so we're finishing off the end of the year. So this is the last episode that just came out on today, the 21st, November 21st, was with Rocket City dietitian Rachel Brown. For December, we have episodes we've already recorded with the Open Door. Open Door training. It's a company in town that works with people on the spectrum to get job training, and they partner with a lot of different local businesses to get the training for people on the spectrum. So that was a fantastic episode with David Steiger, I believe is his last name, and that episode comes out the 5th, and then the 12th is with Brent of All Shook Up Catering. It's a mobile bar and beverage catering company. So great conversation with him. We actually made a drink during the podcast episodes. We made a little old fashioned. So it was a great little, great time, great podcast. And then I record, next week, a week from today, with Ashley Ramirez of Mason Dixon. We sat down maybe 2.5 years ago. Lots changed in her business. So we're sitting back down to talk a little bit about what's all changed. She's moved locations. She's a bigger location. And so we're going to sit down, and she'll be my last episode of 2022. And that'll come out the 19th, I believe. Typically right now we're looking at 3 guest episodes. We've had enough content coming out. And I don't like to hold it like we talked about for it's too long. And so 3 guest episodes is currently kind of the structure. There might be some months where we'd only do 2.
Yeah.
We'll do at least 2, but 3 is kind of that sweet ground. I think 4 is too much guest episodes for me to try to do. And then we also have the weekly What's Happening in Huntsville, which come out so my guest episodes come out on Mondays at 9 a.m. And then my weekly episodes come out every Thursday at noon.
When do you hit your episode 100? It's coming up.
So it'll probably be January if I had to guess. So we'll be at the end of this month. Let's see, we'll be 90, 91, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Probably like the first, maybe the second guest episode of January will be 100. And we might do something special. Might have another podcast where someone interviews me on my own podcast. Maybe you come and interview me on my podcast.
Yeah.
So I think there'd be some fun thing. It's always different ways to kind of engage. And we're doing a tinsel trail tree again this year for the company. It's the 3rd year we've done it, so I got to decorate that this week. So it's on the schedule. But yeah, that's kind of what the podcast is looking like for the rest of the year. Looking forward to it. There's a lot of, I think having these guests back on is a big part of what I want to do.
Yeah.
Lots changed because I've been first couple seasons were before COVID. And so businesses have either completely pivoted to what they do. They've expanded to what they do, and they're offering more different things. So definitely sitting back down with them, having a lot of new guests on. And so there's the list. I got to sit down before the end of the year and create a master list of everybody I want to reach out to. Because there's a lot that come through that I see that I would love to sit down with, and a lot that I just, have, maybe they've reached out at one point, but it wasn't the right timing. And so reaching back out. And then I also have like a list of, hey, these are dream people I would love to talk with.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's hard because so many, once people find out about it, they just pepper you with names. You got to talk to this person. You got to talk to that person. And, and sometimes I want to, if something really topical comes up, for example, if I happen to know who the manager was at Buckee's, it would be fun to have him in. Hey, just open your store, right? Like something related to the timing or a current event.
For sure.
But then, sometimes it's more compelling to bring someone on, and maybe you have to bump someone else a little bit down the road. Mm-hmm. But then there's only so much time. And, it's like, as much as I have like a whole list of people I'd love to get to, I can't do an episode every day.
Yeah, and I think too, it's like there's so many industries that are like, for me, it's like I don't want to talk with the same industry.
Yeah.
Too often. And so
Right.
like breweries, there's so many, and I've highlighted a few, but like I'm sitting down actually in December with Yellowhammer,
Yeah.
and their episode will come out in January. And so like it's been, 3-4 months since my last brewery. And so it's a good time. Like, I try to space them out. Same thing with coffee shops, and same thing with like there's industries that Huntsville has so many of. I want to talk to all of them because I've
Yeah.
met and I've been friends with a lot of the owners. It's just a matter of like, hey, like let's strategically put them on the podcast. And then as well as like I have a lot of nonprofits that reach out. And I love sharing about the nonprofits, but like I also got to make sure that they're kind of spaced out too, and like everyone else kind of fits in. I think with doing the more guest episodes, this new sort of flow has only started since August.
Yeah.
And so it's just a lot of figuring out, what works, what doesn't work. My weekly episodes have definitely changed some, and they might continue to change. But those do really, I enjoy doing them. One, for me, knowing about what's going on, and two, it's nice to be able to inform people. The shelf life for those aren't as long.
Yeah.
They really only are really listened to within 3 or 4 days. And then they kind of die off after that. But it's good to put it out there. I enjoy doing it. So
Actually, I want to talk about, let's give some shine to the Rocket City app,
yeah,
because I think you had some work there. Carl was on the episode. Poor guy. I don't know if he ever told you. Sitting in this room, we didn't have AC, and it was like July.
wow,
It was, and I had told him, I was like, look, dude, we're gonna have to bump this, a couple days, whatever. Well, then even then, we still didn't get it fixed. And I was kind of at a point where I really wanted to do it so I could kind of somewhat keep on schedule.
yeah,
And so he just roasted. And we were both sweating like crazy.
yes,
But can you talk to me a little bit about what your role is there? So the Rocket City cast was the concept there was to, like, if I went and searched right now, like podcast near me, you're not going to get anything on Google.
yeah,
So the Rocket City cast is awesome because then it says, okay, who are all the podcast creators? Let's create an app, and everybody can then consume local content, local podcasters. And then the cast, or that's the cast part. And then the app kind of ties in the events, which then you kind of highlight right in your episodes. But can you talk about what Beyond Rocket's role is in the Rocket City app?
yeah. So I guess Carl reached out to me on LinkedIn, I guess, before he was doing the Rocket City cast. The Rocket City cast is what we first created, and that's really where I have more of a hand in than the app itself. The app itself, Carl and his team were creating that. But the cast part is kind of what I first helped with. So he kind of used me as like, hey, the network of people that do podcasts, people that are content creators, not just podcasts, but YouTubers and stuff like that as well. We want to create this, like you said, a place that they could all be listed on, that then you could find and you could search for what's nearby, and then it populates for the newest episodes based on these creators inside this film. And so we created the website first, Rocket City Cast, and then we use a lot of back and forth conversations of like, hey, I think this would work better, or this looks better, this would be better for the creator. So I worked with Carl a lot on figuring out what would look the best. And then once the app was created, then he positioned Rocket City Cast within the app. And that the app itself, like I said, is primarily a zealous marketing sort of creation. I had more of a hand in the Rocket City Cast, like what it looked like and what the onboarding looked like, and really reaching out to a lot of creators themselves and saying, hey, would you be interested? Since then, we've kind of changed the model where if we know of somebody, then you can add them without necessarily having to ask to add them, since it's really just kind of like an aggregator of everything. And so we've kind of changed the model a little bit since. But Carl really does a lot of that on, like, he deals with all the cast. I'm just more of the creative mind kind of that helped him get that up and going. And so we had him on the podcast and talked a little bit about that. So
yeah. Zealous marketing, right? It's his thing. Yeah. I think it's a great tool.
Yeah,
it's one of the
amazing.
The things I check all the time. And it's always, and I don't think any creator is going to turn down someone who's willing to, like, oh, hey, we're going to promote your thing. Okay.
Yeah, and I use the tool when I create my What's Happening in Huntsville episodes. I will have resources like the Rocket City app, downtownhuntsville.org's website with their events page, We Are Huntsville's event page, and really what I'm doing is when I'm creating those episodes, it's what am I interested in? Because there's so much going on, and so I can't talk about everything. I don't want to have a 45-minute episode about events. I want to have a 10-minute episode about things that I'm really interested in. Well, like I love, we go to a lot of plays, love live music, love sporting events, love special events on the square, downtown Huntsville events, things that are really big and cool, like unique. I try to mention those. And so like I'll go through and curate the list. And a lot of it for me is literally I'll have my email open on one of my screens, all the sites pulled up on another screen, and I'll be emailing myself, Stovehouse, here's what all they had. Mid-City, here's all the events they have. And like I try to hit big places like that.
Yeah.
And then all the other places, and then I'll email it to myself, get my SD card, go into the studio, put it in, put on the headphones, record the episode, read off my phone, take it out, bring it to the my computer, put it in, upload it to the drive, and tell my editor that it's up there for him to edit.
There you go.
And that's kind of the process. It's not the most streamlined. It definitely is a little bit of work, but there's a lot of things that we're working on behind the scenes to kind of make that a little bit more streamlined for me to have those events, because there's so much going on. I want to be able to circulate through those, and a lot of people will either have them on their website, they'll have them on their Facebook events, or they'll have them on vice versa. And so figuring out the best spot for those is kind of it. But those episodes have done, it's been fun. I've enjoyed it. It's always funny when I go out with people on the weekends. It's like, so Clark, what's going on this weekend? And so like I'm able to like address, like, why are there so many people at the Von Braun Center? Well, they're having this play, and the Havoc are playing, and this is happening, and that's happening. And so it's kind of like I'm that tool that a lot of my friends and family uses. Like, what's going on, Clark? And so I'm like, oh, listen to the episode and give me the downloads. Right. You can find out all about it. And so it's just me rambling on. And those episodes are tough to do. We talked about it a little bit off air. It's just when you record by yourself, you notice a lot more. And so you're like, oh, I could just stop this now. I could stop this now. When you're like, in this scenario, you're just recording the whole time and you're just going to kind of chop it up from there. But when you're recording by yourself for those episodes, I can do 2 or 3 takes, and you can be so meticulous on every little detail, every way you said something. In reality, you'd be like, this is what, like, it needs to be as authentic of me as I can. And that this hiccup at minute 3 is not going to make or break this episode. Yeah. Someone's not going to listen to it and be like, Clark, I'm going to unsubscribe because that was just a really bad thing. No one's going to say that. And so it's like, okay, I'm okay with this.
Yeah. Yeah. There's been plenty of times where I'll say, oh, I'll edit that later and I'll like forget. Or it's like sometimes people actually like that.
Yeah, I love the authentic.
It's human, and unless it's like really bad, really egregious. Just every now and then I'll have just like a complete mind blank. Like,
where was I going with this again? You have so much going on in your head that you're like, this is what I'm going to say next, and then they'll say something, and you'll forget exactly what that one thing was, and then you just sit there like.
And they're just looking at you like, what's wrong with this guy?
It's like, I'm so sorry. And you're like trying to figure it out. But it does happen. Occasionally, like I try, like with the questions, like you said, like I try to not have very many questions because I want to be able to be engaged with the conversation. But it is tough when they mention one thing and then they go on for a while and then you forget that one thing that you wanted to mention and then you forget what they've been saying lately. And so you're just like, so it's tough.
Yeah, or there's just too many things. And you're kind of, okay, what's the best?
What's the next right step?
What's the best tangent, to take? Any final thoughts or shout outs?
I think that's it. I mean, like I said, if anyone's listening and wants to find out more information, beyondrockets.com /marketing has kind of the podcast and the social media assessment. If you're a business owner and you want to potentially work with and kind of have that conversation on what that would look like, that assessment is definitely the first thing to do. A podcast, if you want to listen, you can subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. And then if you're looking to potentially be a sponsor, there's spots for that too.
Have you thought about uploading your MP4 to Spotify? They do video.
Yeah, so I was one conversation I was gonna have is like what that would look like and how did that work?
It's easy. In fact, I guess the timing of it was good for me when I was like just getting ready to start. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, I had this idea. Let me give myself a month to get ready, whatever. And boom, Spotify comes out with like this beta. I guess they were kind of testing it out.
Okay.
And I had to apply. I think you still have to apply, maybe, and because they have to kind of determine if it's whatever their criteria is. So I had to have an episode. So I shot my episode 1 with Ricky Fernandez, and then immediately I like applied to Spotify to have my MP4 hosted.
Okay.
So for what I don't know if you guys go through Anchor.
Okay.
But I just go to Anchor and I upload the MP4 and I fill out, and Anchor is basically then becomes the RSS distribution. And so it's sending out the MP3 to Apple, Stitcher, all the audio, and then it holds on to the MP4 for Spotify.
Huh.
And so when you're on Spotify, and then you now have the video option.
Yeah.
Or the audio option. And which is nice because YouTube, even though they got a little bit better, like if you like lock your phone,
it's gone.
It's gone. Spotify continues, and so that was it.
Yeah,
so
I'll look into that for sure.
You should because that way you get at least your second video option.
Yeah.
And I just tell people like, well, for the audio, just go search Out of Town Podcast.
Yeah.
For video, you got Spotify or YouTube. But it's
sure.
super simple.
Yeah, I'll look into that. Maybe that'll be something I'll try to start implementing in 2023.
I'll give you props. I somewhere along the way realized you were using Bitly to shorten your URLs, I think. And I was like, I should do that. Because, I sit there and agonize over like, for the people who actually read your post and, you're just trying to get people to notice it. Like even the URL can be too long. And I was like, I think that's a good idea.
There you go.
I'll do that. So I went and signed up for Bitly and
Yep.
and just create all my links there.
Yeah, my posting software that I use for scheduling actually shortens it by itself.
Oh, does it?
And so it does it, and it's like most of the time I do shorten it. The only time I don't is if it's like actually directing to my website, because I want to realize like my website's beyondrockets.com.
Gotcha.
But if it's like to link to listen to like Spotify or like that can be Bitly, because I just need them to get there.
Yeah.
And so it varies, but yeah, it's super convenient because sometimes they can get super, super long. And so it's nice when it's a little bit short and it looks a little bit more concise.
Well, Clark Dunn, I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
And I say this for most of my guests. I truly enjoy just doing a little bit of research. Obviously I don't know you that well, but you learn a little bit, right? And just doing research and listening. And I think there's a lot of similarities in kind of the way I approached my career and, or just going through school and stuff, where I see like myself and you. My oldest is actually 23 and going to get married soon. Okay. So it's kind of like, I am old, but I just really appreciate your story.
Yeah, I enjoyed being on. Thanks for having me. It was fun. It's fun being on the other side of the mic sometimes.
I know, right?
So I enjoyed it.
All right, my man. We'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Talk to you
soon.
soon.
Thanks, Clark.